Okay, I'm bringing everybody in. We're ready to go in just one moment.
Thank you.
And then they go outside and have a cigarette.
I did just mute everybody, so counselors, can you please unmute yourselves? And we're ready to go, Andre, at your cue.
Thank you, Millie. Much appreciated, and all the clerks who make this happen. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Oh, I got to turn on the live feed here. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We're here for our Wednesday, February 3rd work session. I'd like to let everybody know that's on the call to please keep yourself muted. And if you'd like to raise your hand to speak on your phone, you can do so by pressing *9. And you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. With that, we have a short agenda today, but number one on the agenda, we have a discussion with Rhode Island Public Transit Authority with the representatives there regarding the feasibility of a pilot program for the Block Island Jitney for the summer of 2021. We have Scott Avedisian and Greg Norton with us today. So Mary Ann, I want to pass it over to you and let you lead off the discussion.
Great. I only echo what Andre has said. Sometime soon after I started, I received a call from Nicole Verdi, who is Deputy Chief of Staff for soon-to-be Secretary of Commerce, Governor Raimondo staff, regarding RIPTA service in Block Island. She referred me to and hooked me up with Scott Avedisian. For those of you who don't know Scott Avedisian, he's currently the CEO of RIPTA. And prior to that, he served as the mayor of Warwick for a number of years. Joining Scott is Greg Norton, also from RIPTA. We had a few meetings, Zoom meetings, myself with Scott and Greg, and also I had Town Planner Allison Ring join us on those meetings. And we brainstormed about a possibility of a Jitney RIPTA service for Block Island for this coming summer. We have not at this point agreed to anything. We're still in the discussion phase. We are here to get some input and also provide a presentation to everyone. And the time frame associated with this is, again, Memorial Day through Labor Day, 4 days a week. With that, I will turn it over to Scott and Craig to run with what they have and what they plan to present.
Great, thanks, Mary Ann. And
Andre or Scott, at this point, because I'm a holder of a taxi license, I am going to recuse myself. I will unmute.
Right, Mark, and I know you and Councilor Ball will be in that situation. However, recusing does not preclude you to an extent from having input. So I would use your discretion on that, but I just want to make sure that you understand, both you and Councilor Ball, that if you have input, I would certainly accept that. I'll leave that up to your discretion.
Well, I understand if we impacted either negatively or positively from this discussion financially, that it was indeed a conflict. Is Kathy here as our town solicitor?
Kathy is
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Kathy, thank you.
Yes.
As everyone knows, the question of whether or not to recuse is personal to the individual council member. However, if you do have a financial interest in the outcome of this, based on what is being presented, it's probably safer not to put in input. That, however, does not mean that you have to mute yourselves in terms of listening or hearing what's going on. You're certainly entitled to do that.
Thank you. I choose that course and I will unmute, so I will not be giving any input.
Thank you, Mark.
So you'll mute, not unmute.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Mark. Scott, go ahead. I just want to have one more thing. I think we will take a lot, the questions that anybody has on this. But I would like to reserve those for the end of the presentation, so that we could get through this,
Sure.
so we could get through this in a reasonable manner. So with that, Scott Avedisian.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to present to the wardens and the members of the New Shoreham Town Council. I'm Scott Avedisian. As Mary Ann said before, I came to RIPTA in June of 2018. I served as the mayor of the city of Warwick for 18 and a half years and on the city council for 9 years before that. So I'm readily understand the jobs that you all face and the issues that you go through on a regular basis. So I'm going to make some introductory comments about RIPTA and then turn it over to Greg Nordine, who is our planner and he runs our strategic advancement. So when I came to RIPTA, your former town manager had actually reached out to Greg and had conversations trying to comply with the spirit of your comprehensive plan going back, I think, to 15 or 16, as to the town should give some consideration to creating some kind of service. We did meet numerous times with the town manager then. Then Mary Ann came into the role. As Mary Ann told you, the governor's office had some interest last summer. When Mary Ann and I first talked, first of all, it was great to work with Mary Ann again, since we were on the board of the Interlocal Risk Management Trust for many years, and through the League of Cities and Towns, we had a good working relationship before. We dusted off the work that we had done with the previous town manager and sent it off, and then started some real discussions in earnest about what the possibilities were, what it could look like, where we could try to make that work. And therefore, we have a presentation to give to the 5 members of the council today. Before I turn it over to Greg, I'll just tell you that RIPTA has been in business now for 54 years, created by Governor John Chafee to bring together all of the independent electric railway companies that existed throughout the state of Rhode Island under one umbrella, to be called the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority. And we've been serving the public for the last 54 years. And with that, I'll turn it over to Greg, who can walk you through the slide deck that I think Millie has, so that she can put it up on the screen so that everyone can see it.
Thanks, Scott. I can share it myself as well. Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much to the town council for having us today. Hang on a second, let me see if I can pull this up really quickly. I'm getting a note that says the host is disabled participant screen sharing.
I know that we did send it to.
Yeah, we do have it.
Okay.
We're working to get it up just now.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect.
Perfect.
Because I was going to say I can send it again. Oh, there we go. Okay, take it away, Greg.
Great, thank you so much. If you want, you can go to the next slide. So as Scott was saying, my name is Greg Nordine. I'm RIPTA's Chief of Strategic Advancement. I oversee the agency's planning functions, as well as our marketing and project management divisions. And we've been working with Mary Ann and Allison over at the town for the past few weeks, looking at some possibilities that might exist around bringing bus service to Block Island next summer. I am gonna split this up into a couple different sections that should be pretty quick here. Just give you a quick overview about what we're trying to accomplish by bringing bus service to Block Island in the summer. Talk a little bit about the specifics of the proposal that we have some sense of what this might look like next year. Talk a little bit about where we still need some input and some guidance, and then talk a little bit about some next steps. If at any point during this you have a question for clarification, please let me know. Otherwise, we can open it up to questions at the end. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this proposal is really meant to accomplish 6 goals for Block Island over the next or in the summer. One of these goals, and probably the most important, is just to improve overall safety. This is really just meant to, this transit service is really meant to just expand the options available to people visiting the island and give them an opportunity to get around the island without necessarily needing to rely on a single occupancy vehicle. It's also meant to help reduce road congestion on the island, and the busier times of the summer can get quite busy out there. It's also an opportunity for us just to reduce the overall number of vehicles that are needed on the island on a daily basis. So when people are coming over, they're more apt to want to leave a single occupancy vehicle at home and rely on transit service once they get there. Some of the other things that we're trying to accomplish with this is it's going to improve the overall accessibility of the island for people that have disabilities or are seniors and might not be comfortable or might not have an option to get around otherwise. And then this is also something that's consistent with the 2016 storm town comp plan. If you go to the next slide, you can see where this was highlighted. And this is actually taken directly from the town comp plan, just saying that Jitney service or a shuttle van would be explored to help connect the 2 harbors in Town Beach. Go to the slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, so thinking a little bit about this proposal, this is something that we're looking at to pilot for the summer of this year, summer of 21. This would be a 4-day-a-week year, basically weekend plus the shoulder days, and this would start service sometime in mid-June and carry all the way through Labor Day. We're looking at a proposal somewhere between 1 to 2 routes, and these would really be tailored to connect to major destinations. Some of the destinations we've heard so far that were important were obviously the connections between Old and New Harbor and the Fred Benson Town Beach. We've also talked a little bit about connecting directly to the airport, as well as the Southeast Lighthouse and Bluffs section of the island. Move to the next slide, please. This service is a service that would be aligned to start shortly after the first ferry arrives on the island every day and will end just short of the last ferry departure. And this is really in response to the fact that because we don't have any employees that would be on the island full time, we would have to basically get them to the island and home every day. So we wouldn't be able to start service any earlier or continue service any later. The fares for the service would be set to basically cover the cost of the service. So right now, most services we provide are subsidized through revenues from outside of the fare box. We would set this at a level that this would be a sustaining service. Some considerations that we have to consider as we're planning this service is we have to be very considerate of the road widths. Obviously, roads on the island are pretty narrow in places. We also need to think about the fact that the more destinations we add to the service, it stretches out how far the vehicles have to operate, which makes the overall travel time and frequency of that service decline. A good way to think about this is, it's just the more you add, you're stretching that resource further and further. Things we are also considerate of are, as we're planning out bus stops, thinking about the accessibility of those bus stops, making sure that they're in safe locations where people who might be using wheelchairs or mobility devices have equal access to the system. And then thinking about the parking impacts as well. Obviously, if there's any parking, we want to make sure that we can steer clear of that so buses have a safe place to get out of traffic. We continue to the next slide, please. As far as the vehicles are concerned, worth considering using what are considered a 35-foot trolley, which is different than your regular transit bus. It's got a different exterior. These vehicles seat approximately 30 passengers. With a standing load, you can fit up to 50 people on those vehicles. These are currently branded in a red or a green color scheme. We can alter that color scheme as well to reflect the specific brand of the island, perhaps creating a cohesive package between the vehicles, the bus stop signage, and the fare products, so that there's a sort of a nice package narrative around sort of a Block Island trolley. As part of this process over the next few months, we're going to want to engage closely with a lot of external stakeholders as we build this out, specifically the Tourism Council and the elected officials, the town council, obviously, the Chamber of Commerce. We're going to want to talk with taxi owners, ferry companies, and then also the general public to get a sense of how this service would be used. Some things that we're still trying to figure out regarding destinations, we need to really get a sense of, are there destinations that we need to consider more heavily? Like I said, we're looking at Old Harbor and New Harbor, the beaches. Obviously, roadsides is a major consideration there. We're also, we have some questions around fares. We think in the first year, because it's a pilot, we want to keep this as simple as possible. And so we could either create a fare structure where you're paying per trip. So every time you board, you would pay a price, or we could create a day pass where you could basically purchase it once during the day and then use it as much as you'd like. Obviously, in future years, if this is successful, we could get more nuanced with this, refining those products further. Considerations for the bus stops, obviously, like I said, we need to make sure that they're in accessible locations, and we're going to work closely with the town on siting those locations. Other things that we're considering as part of this process, obviously, these are vehicles that we have to move on and off the island. We're considering all the needs around how we're moving our vehicles and our staff to and from the island on a pretty regular basis. We're not anticipating taking the vehicles back every day. So we're working with the town on identifying locations where we could potentially store vehicles a night in a secure location. Fuel is a major consideration for us. We need to have access to a diesel fueling station. We want to work closely with the town on developing a marketing plan so that when people come to the island, they know the service is there. What are we doing in example in emergencies? How are we getting our maintenance staff on and off the island if something happens with the vehicle? And then on the fare side, where are we selling our fare products? Is there a way that we can work with local businesses or local groups to get fare products into the hands of people who are coming to the island in a way that's easy and recognizable? Next slide, please. So next steps, I'm sorry. Next steps, obviously, this is still a fairly conceptual plan. So we're going to want to continue to get pretty significant feedback. I'm hoping we'll hear some great things tonight. If we do move forward with this, we do need to move relatively quickly. We'd like to finalize the route sometime in early March. And then at that point, spend the rest of the spring really focusing on getting the bus stop locations in place, building out the branding package, and really just tightening that up. And then we'll also need to reach out pretty early to ferry operators so we can start working with the ferry providers and getting an agreement to get our vehicles and our staff across across to the island on a 4 times a week basis. So that does it for me right now. I'm happy to open it up to questions.
So Greg, can I just jump in one more
Please.
time? So members of the council, I also need to let you know that I have received 4 emails from 2 individuals about the proposal. And I will send copies of them to Mary Ann so that she can get those documents out to all the members of the council as well.
Thank you, Scott. Councilors, any questions, comments? Sven, go ahead.
So a couple of things. First of all, thank you very, very much for the presentation and sort of the positioning of it. I think it's important that everybody understands that this is by all means a working process. And I want to compliment, honestly, I want to compliment Mary Ann and Allison for, this started, somebody can correct me, but I'll say 3.5, 4 years ago. And the outreach by RIPTA and at least allowing this to get up on the table and have a good discussion. Andre, my feelings are, and I think I've been consistent about this for the last few years, is let's keep, especially the first year, but let's keep this relatively small. So my feeling is Old Harbor, State Beach, not further up, New Harbor, and then I'd love to do either town hall or maybe the airport, but really town hall for parking. So if somebody wanted to park, especially on those days, you could park one place and then take the loop. The only other, or one of the other big comments I would have on the fare structure, at least as it was presented, I saw per day and per trip. would love to have a consideration for per season. If there are employees or there are people that live here that want to park and then get somewhere or do something, that there is a seasonal pass. I would assume there's a discount structure accordingly, and it would be an attractive thing. I think that, throughout the next hour or so, we'll have a big dialogue, but those are two sort of, I'll say, add-ons to the consideration set. And I do think that, the 35-foot trolley is a challenge. Roads here, especially in those times of the year, between walkers, bikers, mopeders, you name it, become congested. So I would love to have seen smaller vehicles, but we're sort of are where we are. So that would be a question to Ripta is there any way to get a smaller vehicle? I'll use the term shuttle bus, but I think if I think about airports or those kind of things, that to me would be a little bit more apropos, especially given the road widths and road structures and road conditions and pedestrians. So at some point, maybe down in the Q&A part, they can address that later. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Sven. Keith? You'll have to unmute, Keith.
Yeah, thanks. Just first of all, thank you so much for coming and attending. One of the questions I had is whether you guys have any analogous situations. I mean, this is a brand new idea in a tourist community that relies heavily on taxis for a lot of this. I can't imagine though that's maybe it is, but that's unique where a bus service was started or a shuttle service was started. And I don't think you have to answer that off the top of your heads, but I think it would be helpful to have some analysis because again, it can't be completely unique as to how this worked for everybody. That would be helpful to me. The other thing is, and Sven, I think, started to touch on this, but one of the potential advantages of an option like this is getting employee, worker cars off the road, so that you don't have necessarily workers traveling from wherever their room or house or apartment is, their congregate living site. Sometimes those are remote from their workplace. And I think we do have a fair bit of traffic on, shift change type times. So I would hope that you'd reach out to, to the, we all know who they are, and we'd be happy to tell you, but that I think reaching out to them would be helpful. How wide is the trolley?
They're
that you're
9
talking
feet
about?
wide.
Pardon me?
9 feet wide.
9 feet wide. I mean, I really think you can't underestimate on some parts of this route what those roads look like. And I don't mean to be presumptuous here because you guys are the transportation experts, but it is not unusual to have walkers, bicyclists, and moped operators literally kind of parallel to one another while cars are trying to move on both sides, while cars are trying to move, say, north and south up the neck. So it's, I think from a public safety perspective, we really would I'd love to hear, over time what your analysis is of that situation. Because I think that's, geez, it's tough in our 25-year-old Volvo station wagon to fit it through sometimes when we're trying to go to the dump. So I think that's important, and I'll hold. I don't have anything else, but I know that was a bit scattershot. But those are my thoughts initially.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keith. Thank you, Keith. Anybody, comments, questions? Brad Martins? I see your hands up.
Hi,
Hey.
Andre, and Scott and Greg. I'm actually the chairman of the Motor Vehicle for Hire Commission out here, which is charged with, in an advisory capacity to the town council, to look at the bus situation, the privately licensed, which are all privately licensed buses and taxis out here. And my concern is, by the sound of your presentation, and it's a very nice presentation, but in many ways apparent that you're not familiar with the island in a lot of ways as well, but want to be, that there's concerns on, it almost sounds like this is already a done deal. And my understanding from the town council, this is not necessarily the case, maybe it is. But concerns are and questions are, is how will this reduce the congestion vehicular? Because when someone's renting a $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 house out here by the week, and they have 4 vehicles, they're going to use those vehicles. It's very nice to see that an idea for employee transportation. Most of those employees are starting before this service would kick in during the day, and we're working well after this service as well. These are just questions out there. And the next line on the comprehensive plan, if I'm not mistaken, also charges that the town council, in essence, come to the Commission for Motor Vehicle Hire for the taxi license holders, the bus license holders, and see if they can come up with a possible plan. And last year being a pandemic year with a lot of concerns there and less drivers on the road because of the pandemic requirements, and that these are, small business owners that are also concerned with their own lives as well. There's some concerns out there for that. Now, a 32-foot bus, and to kind of make it in terms a lot of islanders will think about, that's 4 8x4 sheets of plywood in length. That's pretty big. And it's wider than that when you think about it on the lanes out here, which are obviously very narrow, which you're obviously already familiar with. That's huge. Doesn't sound like it, but that's huge. Okay. And how is this going to reduce congestion? Because people are still going to be using vehicles, especially when they're going to a specific destination. And, to the town council, this is something that, would be nice to possibly even offer to the bus license holders out here. But according to the guidelines, they can't even offer something like this up. So, and my concern is that while this conversation may have been started years ago, the recent conversations, the commission was not aware of until recently, and has had no chance to hold even a meeting with license holders of any sort out here, as well as getting public input as well. On a side note as well, from a private business point of view, I'm not so, and I don't want to be negative. I think that there may be an argument in some cases, but I'm not so sure this is the year to do it when there's so many other things that are going on out there. For example, I'm not sure what the occupancy levels, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, on a bus that handles 32 people, 50 if they're standing. You can't take that many in a public situation out here and not endanger people, because they're certainly not all going to be tested at that point. I wouldn't want to get on that bus, and I know it's affected ridership on the mainland as well. And the taxi license holders were constrained last year by Department of Health guidelines as well. Okay, so there's a lot of concerns and a lot of questions out there that, we as a commission want the opportunity to address before decisions are made. And that's not a fast process, nor is it something that I think can be done just because it sounds nice. There has to be a proven need. And I think if you're going to bring the comprehensive plan in, we should try and follow that comprehensive plan as well.
Thank you, Brad. Anybody have any feedback or comment on that? If not, I'll move on to the next person with their hand up. Sven?
Actually, just real quickly, Andre, maybe Greg, could you just help me real quickly? Given Brad's comment on COVID, are you at 50% occupancy in a bus? How does COVID affect 50 people?
Our buses are currently at 20 passengers per vehicle.
So this would be at 20 people versus the 50 standing, 32 sitting. Is that right? Thank you. That helps clarify as we go forward. Great comment, Brian. About that.
Thank you, Sven. Thank you, Greg. Okay, so I have a hand up. It was 742-5502. If you would identify yourself, and we'll hear your comment.
Hi, this is Thea Manje.
Hi, Thea.
All
Go ahead.
right, so I just want to say I run a business on Dodge Street on the island, and my family owns a taxi license, which we waited for 16 years, and I've worked in town for the past decade. And I just want to say that I love RIPTA, and I went to Brown, and RIPTA services were a mainstay of my life during that time, but I don't think that a jitney would be conducive to success on the island. Right now, there's just no reality that exists to me where ferries aren't packed to the brim with full-size vehicles during our peak season. I mean, people call the reservation office hundreds of times trying to get a reservation to get a car onto the island during the summer months. Standby lots are never empty, and there's always going to be that demand to bring a car here, and it's not going away. And I think that a bus would only really add to the pandemonium. There's currently no room for any bus turnouts that I can think of that wouldn't interfere with moving traffic in any of the suggested pickup or drop-off locations. A large vehicle that makes any stops in these areas will bring traffic to a standstill, and it impedes on the livelihoods of taxi drivers who wait literal decades to be able to get these licenses. And while I'm sure that the RIPTA partnership is very well intentioned, I'd suggest that the town look at alternative methods of addressing our traffic issues instead of adding to them directly. Notably, the low cost of bringing a car here is something that hasn't been pursued recently with Interstate. I think that the low cost of bringing a car over on the traditional ferry is actually costing us a lot locally in terms of emissions and in congestions to our roadways. Right now, it costs just about $100 for a full-size vehicle to make a round trip on the ferry, but on the Vineyard, during peak season, it's $192 midweek and $230 on weekends. To go Hyannis to Nantucket during peak season, $492 midweek and $550 on weekends. Now, you could argue that the latter fare is 2.5-hour ferry ride, but even if you prorate it down, it's still over $200. So I think that instead of adding to this system, you need to kind of address the underlying issues, which is that we have this huge congestion problem, and a jitney that goes between 3 different places isn't going to dissuade people who come here. And, you know, I've had renters of my own home bring 2 to 4 vehicles for a single week. So unless that is addressed directly, I'm almost certain that a bus will only add to the congestion that we face on our roadways. And of course, I'm not arguing to make the island inaccessible by hiking the prices, but right now, I think that without addressing how many cars are coming to the island in the first place, it's going to just infringe on the taxi business. And I think that, again, this is a well-intentioned plan, but I just don't think that this is the right year to do it. And I think that if you're going to integrate it, it needs to be done by people that already live here and that have been waiting for decades to get a foothold in this business. That's all I got.
Thank you, Thea. Anybody want to comment on that comment, or I'll go for the next person with their hand up, which would be 401-997-7277. Identify yourself, and we'd love to hear from you. 9.
Oh, hi. Good afternoon. My name is James Rondinoni. I wanted to thank, RIPTA for the presentation. I have a couple of thoughts. A couple of comments that were made about not having to rely on single vehicles. The idea would be to maybe lessen the number of cars being brought over. Well, we do have an alternative transportation model than RIPTA that's been working fine since probably the late 1920s, and that is that we have 32 taxis. So anyone that chooses not to bring their vehicle over, by all means, can take a taxi, and I think we've done a really good job. I've been taxiing for about 30 years, and I think we pick up bicycles, we pick up people from their rental houses, we take them from A to B, we sometimes even get get their groceries or get their a meal that they've ordered from a restaurant. So we do a lot of things. And so I don't know how a RIPTA bus would really cause someone, maybe a couple of people, to not bring their vehicle over. But I also think that any of those slots that would be vacant on the ferry during the summer would be filled right away. It's almost impossible, I think, most of us that live here to get a spot on the ferry coming over from Point Judith in July and August. And if there is a vacancy, it's gone right away. For disabilities, those who have disabilities, we have varied sized vehicles, some low riders, some high riders. Again, I don't think that's been an issue. Last summer, again, was very difficult because of COVID, but hopefully we won't see that again. The idea of somebody mentioned, I think, on a council of maybe having some kind of a smaller vehicles. Well, we have an option. We put in a proposal. I think most of you have received it, to allow the taxis to go from 12 passenger to 15 passenger. That would mean that 2 of them alone would be able to take the capacity of one of those trolleys. And if we could possibly have, we have 32 licenses, we could possibly have as many as 10 of those that would be able to also, multi-fare as needed. So we'd be charging people on a per person basis in that sense, but would also be able to pick up more than one party as the need arose. Also, I think some of you might be aware of the petition that was submitted to the council members. We were able to obtain over 100 signatures from those that either live here, also even tourists that have been coming out here, primarily on weekends. And there wasn't one that wanted to see buses out here. I think there's just a quality of life that we've all kind of like taken for granted, but we all do enjoy it. The open spaces, and I think definitely trolleys would infringe on that. And my last thought is we have 32 taxi owners and I believe over 30 families on the taxi waiting list. You're talking over 100 people that rely on this money. And if these trolleys were allowed to, work here during the summer, they would take the cream off the top. Harbor to harbor, that's where we make at least 50% of our income. And, those monies that are taken in, many of those that own these taxis, they need that money to be able to stay here year round and pay their expenses. So again, I would hope the council has heard, some of the issues that would face the cab owners and even the community, and that they would vote to table this and continue to use the taxis. And one last thought: what about also buying a piece of land somewhere in and near town to provide extra parking for cars that, as we know, go back and forth, that would have a place to park? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. And I have personally received your correspondence and correspondence of the other taxi drivers and read every single one of them. So I appreciate those comments today, and thanks for putting that together and sending it in.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next person with their hand up is a 401-499-9824. Identify yourself and we'll listen to your comments. 499-9824.
Champlin Star.
Hi, Champ.
Hello. Yes. Okay. I'm not going to I'm going to bypass the points that have been already made, but on the comprehensive plan back in 2016, the previous council, we met motor vehicle for hire and several taxi people, owners, and it was discussed, if we had a complaint, show us a complaint and we'll do better. There was no complaints. The commission then said, what do you want from us? The town council basically said, well, we'll see. So don't get it that we didn't do anything. We have been standing. We have upped our fleet. A lot of people have gotten bigger vans to accommodate the people. But what we're talking about with the bus, you're missing the point. It's the people. It's not how we move them. Block Island is inundated by people. One way, a more positive way, would be the state to procure low-cost parking on the other side. Ms. Andre mentioned about the ferry. The ferry's not the issue. It's the parking has gone up. They've upped it from $5 a night to $20 a night, and that's per calendar day. So if you come over Friday night, go to a wedding Saturday morning and leave on the noon boat, you're charged $40. Not, you're on the island 18 hours. So I think the state needs to look at procuring off-site, maybe, over in Point Judith, and have parking the way all other parking lots are done. Long-term, one rate, hourly, another rate. So on a bigger picture, I feel that, again, we're missing what we're trying to accomplish here. By putting 2 more trolleys on isn't alleviating congestion. A suggestion is one-way traffic through town from Bridgegate up through past Surf, National, up to Rebecca, turn, go down Weldon's Way to Chapel and then Old Town. Make it one way. I know it would seem inconvenient at first glance, but everyone that gets off the ferry in Point Judith does the exact same route. Years ago, you could turn left and get right on the escape road. They made it through the state, that loop. Let's do the same. People come out of the parking lot, turn left. I know someone, this was 4 years ago at a meeting, said, well, what about the trailer trucks? And I said then, and say it again, we don't need trailer trucks. That is compounding on an already existing problem. Make it maximum length, I think Ripta just said, 35 feet. So box trucks, what's wrong with box trucks? Someone's going to say, what about fuel? I say, because I was in the business, bring it in by a barge and let them offload the way Sprague and Rose does their gravel down in Old Harbor. They have delivery trucks, they have storage tanks. Bring a barge in occasionally, not every, a charter fleet of, through interstate, bring in these tanker trucks. If they need to have a big truck, circle off the boat, turn left, go around the island, and make your deliveries going south, west to north. These lumber trucks come off and they turn right, and then they stop traffic at the National and the Surf. So those are a couple of, things I think would be better served is to look at the big picture. Putting 2 more trolleys on is almost ridiculous. It's not going to solve the issue with people and vehicles. Thank you very much. And Scott Avedisian, I think your father was my gymnasium coach up at Pontegansett. That's all.
Thank you, Jim. 466-2834. 466-2834. You can unmute, state the name, and we're waiting for your comment.
Hey, am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay, hey, I want to talk after my cousin, Champ Star. I wasn't going to talk. It's Kathy Payne. Hi.
Hi, Kathy.
I'm looking at my name. Is that it?
That's you.
Okay. Wow, that's...
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. I actually feel sorry for these 2 men that came over. And I'm not going to save my sorrow. Usually I do. But you guys are the big old guys upstate, and my lawyer's up there right with you. But we have a small, good old boys on Block Island. My family's name is down on there on that rock, down there with that beautiful lighthouse you have on your brochure. My great-grandmother was born in that lighthouse. Years ago, when my family and Champ's family opened up the new harbor, I'm going to tell a story because this is funny, because this meeting is not funny. When we opened up that harbor to make it the Great Salt Pond that you probably tie your boat in, my brother owns Payne's Dock, the people from Providence were opposite. They didn't want to come here and make money. They wanted to stop us from making money. And they fought with us. And my Aunt Harriet, on her dying bed, I'd ask her to tell me the story over and over again, because it was her grandfather that helped open up that harbor. And she said, they didn't want us to open up that harbor. They gave us an urn afterwards, but we sent those Providence people home bloody. So that's all I have to say about coming out here with your new ideas. I mean, those are slick ideas and everything, but I'll tell you what, I'll use that 4x4 post. I'll cut it down with a chainsaw. That is obnoxious to think that you're going to bring a trolley out on Block Island. Now, it's not your fault, I want to say. It's kind of fake news, as I call it. I've been voting in this town 50 years. I didn't vote for one council member except one, and she's a woman. If I voted for her, I don't even remember. I didn't vote for any of these people because they don't represent us. They don't know how. It's not their fault. They don't know how. They listen to the people with the money. Block Island is full of money, and us cab drivers don't make enough. So I'm talking from my heart right now in my own office, but you're never going to get here. I'm sorry that you went through all of this. I can't even tell you how many town managers we've had.
Hey, Kathy. Kathy,
Yeah, it's over. The meeting is over. I send these people home. They've wasted their time. We're not going to get trolleys. That's the point I want them to know. And I've already talked to the new governor. Now I have to add something about the old governor. The old governor, if she gets in the Biden administration. She closed the beaches in Rhode Island. Who ever heard of closing the beaches in Rhode Island? That's why we had the people out here. The scamdemic is going to be over. Having a lot of people on the island and bumper to bumper means we're going to have a good Christmas. That's it.
Thank you, Kathy. All right. I don't see any other hands up. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? I see a lot of people on the call here. Mary Ann, obviously this was the first meeting that we were discussing this, and I think we had scheduled maybe a time next week if we wanted more public comment, or we had for the 9th, and we had, I think February 17th was this topic on our regular monthly meeting to vote whether or not to move forward. Could you clarify any of that, or?
Yeah, what we did was when we scheduled this first workshop at this point, we also chatted with RIPTA and asked if they could also come back on Tuesday the 9th in case the council would like to have another workshop and also get additional input from folks on the island. So that is a possibility if it's the pleasure of the council.
How does the council feel about Tuesday the 9th? Do you think it's necessary to have another public input meeting on this? I'm open to what you guys want to do. Sven?
I think it would be good, if nothing else, to have a meeting where people can talk and share their thoughts in productive ways. I would love to hear if there are any, again, just to make sure we're aligned on what the proposal is, on any vehicles that could be less than 35 feet. I don't believe there are, and I like the trolley concept, meaning the graphics, but I worry about a 9-foot wide anything on the roads, and everybody I think understands why. And the one thing that, and I know it's a little bit about the cart before the horse, but thinking about the route, I would really love to have a discussion and sort of nail that down. Right now, it seems very loose. I think that would be a good thing for the 9th.
Thank you, Sven. Keith, did you have your hand up?
I just would like the 9th because I asked some questions that I'd really like to get some feedback on. I think we all have the, excuse me, similar concerns. And, I do want a sense of whether there are analogous situations, perhaps not even just in Rhode Island, but elsewhere. Frankly, some sense that there's thoughtful analysis going into things. I mean, I think Champ, I can't remember what, Champ Thea maybe raised the issue of like, where do you turn a 35-foot trolley around? I mean, I literally, I don't have any idea how that works, but I'd like to know that. Those kinds of things. I think a little bit more meat on the bones here would be very helpful for me to make a decision. Thank you.
Sven, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the other thing that would, and I don't know how to structure this, so I'll just say it. I think if there can be a way to have the meeting with motor vehicles for hire, maybe before that meeting, at that meeting, simultaneous, I don't know, but I do think that we have a group that is very experienced and knowledgeable, and getting them as part of this versus, here's a presentation from RIPTA. How do we do that? I'd like to work that into the 9th as well.
Not if I'm going to get beaten by a 4x4 post, but I will.
I heard it was going to get cut down, not beaten.
I see Frank DBA the third. Your hand is up.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? And congratulations to the new council. Happy New Year to everybody. I just want to express my thoughts on this, and the safety of our community is more important, I think, than individual businesses, including ours. The week before, we talked about, unsafe vehicles on the road and deaths and so on. And I think everyone needs to put this into consideration on how, whether it's the Taxi Commission or RIPTA, on how to get lumps of people, congested town from one side of the island to the other. And I think that's where my personal input is on this. I think RIPTA, all I can picture, any kind of small trolley, I do agree that the proposed trolley is a little large. But if maybe the island and the some other source could come up with a better proposal on how to safely get these people around the island. So for instance, if I'm an unexperienced driver and I'm going to my only source of getting around is hopping on a moped, which I've never ridden before in my life, that's the easiest way instead of biking up the most difficult terrain in Rhode Island, Block Island, with all the hills. I would probably jump, if I'm a visitor, on a bus or some sort of public transportation. I think that's safe. I think it just makes sense on the business side of things and tourism as well. I mean, every place in the world you go with popular tourism, there's some sort of bus or trolley or safe passageway. And again, I'm not fighting against Taxi Commission. My whole life, I've always used, starting with Rich back in the day, taxis as a young boy, getting around the island. But I just think last year, especially, there were no taxis to be had. And I think everyone can really agree to that. The island was as busiest as ever. And you could not get a taxi for under 30 minutes at times. And that was really a public, it was scary, because then people jump in cars and they're, you see them in Jeeps. And so I think the island is growing. The future should have some sort of a new vision on transportation on Block Island and safe passage. And that's all. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank, and congratulations to you as well. All right, I see people who already spoken have had their hands up again. Let me just go through everybody who hasn't spoken yet. There are two people. One is Sean McGarry.
Thanks, Andre.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So in the fee structure, RIPTA talks about a subsidized trolley system. So that's our tax dollars that are subsidizing those things. And it's nice to see RIPTA coming here and an opportunity for our tax dollars to flow back into the town, which we haven't seen ever. Is there a way that those dollars can be used alternately than public transportation? Could we get traffic police? Could we get some other applications of accessibility other than a trolley system? Because I love the fact that the state wants to send some of that money back over here, and I hate to lose that opportunity. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Personally, I can't answer that. Save it for the next meeting. 5087, thank you, Sean. All right, so 508-735-2343. Please identify yourself, and you have our ears.
Thank you, Sean. Personally, I can't answer that.
735-2343.
Save it for the next meeting.
508-735-2343. Do you have a comment?
I do, guys. I'm kind of an outsider here. I've been coming to Block Island for about 30 years.
Hold on one second. Can you identify yourself?
I'm sorry?
Can you identify yourself? Your name?
Sure. My name is Chris Milton.
Thanks.
And again, just calling in kind of as an outsider. I've got a lot of friends on the island. I just want to give a little outside of Rhode Island input into this. Again, I've been coming to the island for about 30 years, and Block Island is a unique place. It's different. I was a police officer on Martha's Vineyard for several summers, and the difference between the two islands, it's uncanny. It's very different. It's very different, and it would be a real shame to see Block Island become more like the other islands in the Northeast here, and not taking a step back in time. Obviously progressing into the future. But I understand there's a lot of taxis on Block Island, and these people, understand the economics of the island. And I think part of the lure to the island for a lot of people is it is old-fashioned. It is nice to meet local businesses. Seeing, again, for 30 years, I can remember some unique experiences on the island. But what makes people come to Block Island is it's a step back in time. It's seeing that familiar face at a restaurant or a pub or even in a taxi cab. I understand. I've read your proposal, and I mean, on the outside, it seems good, but I think it would actually detract some people, including myself, from the island. Of course, a 35-foot trolley, that's too big for this island. I mean, making the turn in front of the Surf Hotel, I mean, I can just see that. I see more people on scooters wiping out there with a local vehicle. But I think there are other ways to really examine the traffic issues on the island. Your route, your loop seems great. I know a lot of it is cost. A lot of people are concerned with cost, the cost of a taxi from one harbor to the other. But I own a transportation company back in Massachusetts here, and it's simple supply and demand. It's if my costs as a transportation owner are lower, then I can pass that savings on to a customer. Perhaps relieving some of the regulation for the taxi drivers on the island, or allowing a few more licenses for islanders. This is where they make their money. And a lot of people who are long-term islanders like myself, I continue to come back because Block Island is old-fashioned. It is that is the lure to Block Island. Instead of going elsewhere, it's old-fashioned. Trolley has a great idea, but I'm not sure Block Island's the place for that. I hope you guys consider other options. The gentleman that spoke a few before me regarding parking on the mainland, that is the cost of parking. It's to spend a week to leave your car at a ferry parking lot. It's cheaper to send your car to the island. So a lot of people will get on interstate and take a car to the island. I did it as a non-islander. I left a car on the island for almost 2 months last year. I won't do it again because I don't need it, and I'd rather support small business and the local business. Right now isn't the time, guys, for this type of decision. So I hope you reconsider. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to a great summer on Block Island.
Thank you, Chris. Much appreciated. Champ, go ahead, and then Jim Rondinoni, you can go up to Champ.
Just a couple of closing points. Give us a chance. As I mentioned before, when it was brought up in 16 and 18, I mean, last year was COVID, so we can't count that. People were waiting 2 hours at restaurants because they were short-staffed last year. But there's no concern about opening up more restaurants or food trucks. So give us the motor vehicle for hire a chance. Please, RIPTA, make a proposal, a route, a fare schedule, and see if we can meet it. We can. We have. This isn't something new for us. We have 15 passenger vans out here, and we know the island. And on the route, I mean, take this as you may, but there's 2 more council members that if the route goes up to the southeast, they have to recuse themselves. So then we get down to 1 person, Keith Stover, who's not affected monetarily by the route. If the route goes to the southeast, Andre, I'm sorry, but you would have to recuse yourself because you have food truck. And I know this is where you make your money. Think about that. And then Sven, if that swings into the trolley, swings into the Manatees, 1661, petting zoo, I would have to say you have to recuse yourself too, because it's dropping people off at your establishment. Let's think about this. Let us taxi cab. Give us something you want us to do, and we'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Champ. And, I'll address that later. I'm not going to address that now. I'm not going to get you anywhere. Jim Rondinoni, go ahead.
Hi, how you doing? I just wanted to make a comment, and it was a true statement that someone made that, yeah, there were times last summer that the visitors waited for 30 minutes, but the person who said it needs to understand the background. It was a COVID summer. 18 taxis were off the road. 18 taxis. We only had 14 operating. And most of those taxis that were operating, they didn't have any drivers. They had just 1 person because I lost 3 of my drivers. So normally we would have close to maybe 70 drivers in the summer, 32 taxis. We had 14 taxis and maybe 20 drivers, which means many of them weren't even on the road all day, which usually is not the case in a normal summer. So, and my other thought is to the council, what is it that we're not providing in terms of what we're doing transportation-wise? What is it that we're not accomplishing? What do you feel as though that we're deficient in some areas, and maybe that's why this is happening? I'd just like to hear from you. If you don't have any issues with us, and you believe we're all doing a good job, and we're all able to provide all of which RIPTA says they can do, then I would just say, why do you need RIPTA? And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Does anybody want to answer that, or council-wise? And I'm saving my comments for later. I've been attacked personally twice in this conversation, and I am going to wait until we have another meeting to once tonight and once in a letter about my location. Okay, we're talking about moving people around Block Island as efficiently as we can, and you know, if this is where you want to default to, some of your members want to default to, that's fine with me. But I am not going to discuss any of this until I've had a chance to sit on it. Brad, go ahead. Sven, will you?
Thank you, Andre, and members of the council, as well as, again, Scott and Greg. As the chair of the Commission for Motor Vehicles for Hire, I would just, again, and I totally get where both Greg and Scott came from, that this is a, you know, somewhat of a urgent from their point of view, but from our point of view, considering the pandemic is still with us as well, I would urge you to let us as a commission get together with the license holders, which I did say earlier, both bus and taxi, and try and address your specific concerns and see if we can't come up with some alternatives that would work, especially for this season, meaning 2021, and into the future as well. And that may not necessarily happen between now and February 9th. And if that's the case, maybe that needs to be the case. You can't rush doing something. It's easy to regulate. It's really hard to deregulate. So let's try and do it and do it properly and correctly. That's all I request.
Brad, I know Andre had to step. Oh, are you back?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Andre had to step away, but Brad, I think as I said earlier, this is Sven. As I said earlier, I'm hoping that we can have a meeting with the Motor Vehicles for Hire. Obviously, hopefully you can have a meeting with your folks and you said the bus drivers, and then have a meeting with RIPTA on the 9th. I do think it would be good for us all to at least state and be clear about sort of goals. This has been a very good discussion in my mind about getting input, and now really talk about the goals, talk about what we would want, and then sort of evaluate all the options and hear RIPTA's responses. So I do think there's a need, or there's a benefit to having a meeting on the 9th, and let's get all the input then. We can all absorb what we've heard tonight, and hopefully the Motor Vehicles for Hire can be part of that meeting, and having heard from constituents, and we can figure out how to best serve the island.
Sven, I totally get what you're saying, and I agree that the meeting on the 9th is a good perhaps starting point. I just I don't want to. It sounds like this is essentially a done deal, which is a concern for everyone. And you've had anyone from 50 to 65 people watching today. Not all of them are going to be making comments, obviously, but there's been some excellent feedback for and against, and I think that we just need to have the time to evaluate it. But I prefer that the commission that you've charged with something be involved with this specific issue, not ones in the past,
Sure.
by private individuals, that sort of thing as well, which
Sure.
is, and as well as address the comprehensive plan too, which again, there's portions of that comprehensive plan that are conspicuously absent from any of the presentation too.
And Andre, I'll turn it back, sorry, and Brad and everybody else in Motor Vehicles for Hire, at least I'll speak for myself. I am very pleased personally that RIPTA has made this presentation. There are no done deals here. This is a presentation, I mean, not even the route is identified or stops. I mean, there's so many questions. I think they're all answerable. I think they're all doable. I think people have tonight voiced at least opinions, and I don't think anything's baked, but I do think that there's an opportunity to make the island better. And I don't know how to do that. And I look forward to working with Motor Vehicles for Hire, working with everybody and doing this together. And I think the 9th is the next good step. So go ahead, Andre.
Agreed.
Thank you, Sven. Kathy Payne, if you have something, one more time.
Oh, yeah, you're going to let me talk? I want to close with something. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We're talking about money here, actually. The bottom line is money. And I don't blame RIPTA for trying to come out here and bail out the state. But it's not going to happen, and they probably understand that now. But the reason why people are attacked is because you serve the people. Remember, you were elected to serve the people, we the people. You are in business, and that's why we attack you. We're in business. You're attacking us. You know, I have been driving cab 50 years, my father 50 years before him. I'm not only a cab driver. I own property and a lot of it. I pay a lot of taxes. I can't pay those taxes driving a taxi if a bus comes out here. You run a business on federal property. That's why we attack you. You are an elected official. So there you go. You can go home and suck your thumb, whatever you want to do. But the truth is, these people were misinformed, and I feel sorry for them. They have no idea what this town is. They have no idea. Jim Hummel will tell them. That's the end of it.
Thank you, Kathy. 466-5839.
Hello.
466-5839.
Yep. Do you hear me?
Yes, who is this?
Judy Clark.
Judy Clark, go ahead.
Anyway, I'm not going to attack you, I promise. But listening to everything and most of the stuff that was already said, I had thought about saying. Luckily, it was already done. But of course, mentioning the unusual season and all that. But one of the things that I wanted to bring out is that in the comprehensive plan that they put on their proposal, they left a little bit of it out. And in the proposal, you can read, and I won't read it all because we are all familiar with it. It says, consider the establishment of a shuttle van. And then at the end of that paragraph, it says in different colored letters, it says, public-private partnership with taxi operators on the island should be explored. In other words, I'm thinking that maybe that whole comprehensive plan for the transportation and the part that's under transit was meant to, if need be, have the taxis come forward and try to resolve any issues that you might have with people not getting taken care of. Or anyway, so I have presented a proposal to the Motor Vehicles for Hire, and I sent it to you. I'm sure you've seen it. All my little letters that I sent to you. But I'm thinking, like Rondo said, is upping the capacity to 15 passenger vans to 14 instead of 11 to allow us to try a shuttle, a temporary shuttle, just to see how it works. We can record everything that goes on, and that shuttle wouldn't interfere with the taxis, and it would be owned by the taxis, who would then share the money from that taxi. So they would not be losing any of their income, but yet we would meet your shuttle and jitney story. And probably that's about it. And we do get emotional, us taxi drivers, over this subject. So I am sorry for that.
Thank you, Judy.
All right.
Martha Ball.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Martha Ball. Counselor Ball needs a clarification.
I was muted. Am I here?
You're back.
God, there's like those family videos of Thanksgiving that nobody can do. No, I just wanted a clarification because this, I've been hearing this back and forth. I just want to be sure everybody's on the same page. Is this what is the status of this proposal? Is this something the town is going to be voting on, or is RIPTA simply going to do this? What is the actual process? I just want to be sure everybody's clear on where we stand with it.
Do you want me to run with that, Andre?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what this is tonight was the first meeting. Tonight is a council workshop and a work session, and RIPTA was one of the folks we decided to bring forward to this work section. We have other work sections with other things going on. And this is just to do a presentation at this point to get feedback. We also reserved another night, being February 9th. RIPTA has that on their schedule to bring them back if folks choose to. Also to continue with feedback and dialogue. And then we're looking to bring this to the full council at their meeting on the 16th to make a vote and a decision whether or not this is a pilot program the council is interested in doing for next summer. The timeline is such that if the council and the town decides they want to move forward with this, a decision needs to be made, and Scott and Craig jump in here as I understand it, by the 1st of March so that they can get staffing and vehicles and stuff in place to do that. March 15th at the latest. That's why the timetable that we have put forward is before you this evening.
Yeah, thanks, that's all I needed. I wanted to know.
Thank you, Martha. Anybody else have any other comment on this? Anybody from?
Andre, I had my hand up. Bill McComb.
Yep, I just saw you. Go ahead. And then Judy, we'll give you one more closing comment. Go ahead, Bill.
Yep, can you hear me okay, Andre? I'm on a speaker here. I want to thank the mayor and, oops, I apologize. I want to thank the mayor for his presentation. I have a little concern, and I'm not quite sure if this is safety-driven congestion or if it's an economic thing, because the fares itself that we have the numbers, although they're not solidified, they're not what we're used to seeing. You can go from Narragansett to Providence for $2 and so forth. So if I look at it from the congestion side, I think, and as someone who has a bus license and a bus on the island, it's definitely, it's tight. And I think, you know, if you're stopping, you're going to get that backlog. So I think that needs to be vetted through a little bit further. But also, I think where the angst is coming in is that if the partnership is going to be the community, the town, whether it be the ferry and the businesses, I think they all need to be invested in that. And for this time frame that is so quick, by March 2nd, having a decision having to be made, I don't think that's ample time, or that deadline is being put out there. That and I think that's where the angst comes in, because we're not looking at identifying exactly what the problem is and what all of our options are with it. So I think the time frame on that, if we don't do it by March 2nd, I don't think that we should be pressured into making that decision based on that time frame. I think it should be vetted out, certainly including the taxi commission and in the community to what is actually the best. I mean, to the first order, it's a nice presentation. It looks good. I think it's the wrong vehicle size-wise. Doesn't mean it couldn't, a different type of vehicle could be discussed, but I think it needs to be vetted through, you know, with maybe a little less emotion and some factual to get to what the objective is. Thank you.
Andre, do you want me to jump in for a second and just give the reason for our time frame?
Please go ahead.
So thanks, Bill, for your comments. In order for us to start at the time frame that we were told would be the target if we were to move forward, we came up with that time frame in order for us to be able to do all the internal things that we would need to do in order to be ready for mid-June.
And can I follow up, Andre?
Yep, go ahead, Bill.
And I appreciate that, Mayor, and I respect it. But I also look at it, you know, we're restricted, actually, we're restricted to 20 people on our buses. So I think that, I understand those constraints that you have. And if we come to that date and it works fine, but if to be rushed on it because of the time frame, I think might be a poor mistake on our end of it. So respecting the fact that you have those budgetary and so forth time constraints, respecting that, I think on the same token, that shouldn't be the decision for us not to fully vet this as if it's what the community, it's the right fit and the exact ones. You know, I just think we need to take that into consideration also. But thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Judy Clark, closing comment?
Yeah, you got it?
Yeah, go
Am
ahead.
I here?
Go ahead.
All right. So Bill just pretty much said it, but I feel like the manager, Mary Ann, making these dates to rush it along to accommodate RIPTA and possibly put this through without further letting the taxis come up with some things as well. So you're saying you're going to vote on the 16th. And that to me is rushing it. If you're going to have a meeting, today's the 3rd, you're going to have another meeting on the 9th. And then boom, on the 16th, you're going to decide. You're going to decide our fate on the 16th. That's what I'm looking at, right? Yes, no?
I think we're going to have to, we are going to have a meeting and take in more info and get some answers.
Yeah, on the 9th. And then Marianne says that on the 16th, it'll come for voting.
That's currently what the schedule is, yes.
Andre, I'm
So-
sorry, I'm going to interrupt. It's Millie.
Boom,
again.
boom, boom. Okay, so basically, that's why everybody thinks this is a done deal, because first the 3rd, then the 9th. Now you got the 16th. We got them saying the March, whatever it is that they need to do this by. They're telling us when we need to make a decision now if they're going to come. Is that true?
No, let me jump in here, Andre, if I can.
Go
What I'm
ahead.
saying is, we were given a time frame where we were told when the town would like to see the service, if it happens, start. In order to make that date, we set out different criteria that we need to have answers to. If we don't make that date, then we just wouldn't offer service. And so we're trying to.
I understand that.
I'm trying to give you what we would need to do in order to have service that would be a pilot this summer. And if there's no decision, then there's no decision, and we would just go on and do other things.
Okay. Well, I must say that the taxis will not give you a deadline. We are ready to go whenever you want. Bye.
Thank you, Judy. Millie, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to clarify that the next council date is actually February 17th. Thank you.
Not the 16th.
Sorry,
I know, I had that.
sorry, Millie. You're right.
I have it written on the palm of my hand before the meeting, so I knew, so I guess I'll get when I'm at home, all right. Is that it on the topic of?
Just, Andre, just,
Hold on. Who was that?
I apologize. This is Bill McComb. I apologize. When I didn't mean to cut Marianne off when she's done. If I could just ask one question.
It's all right, Bill. Go ahead. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, my question would be, my question would be is, if for some reason, no one wants to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If this isn't able to be vetted thoroughly so it works, is it possible that this opportunity may be for the future also, or is this a matter of if we don't make a decision by March, it may be off the table for the summer, but that doesn't mean it can't be vetted and looked at for the following season or whatever it might be. Is that correct? I guess that would be the one.
so can I jump in? Yes. So to answer your question, Bill, yes. So let's get back to the origin as to how this all unfolded. I started the end of August. I received a phone call from the governor's office, and the phone call was based on what happened last summer. Keep in mind that we requested from the state police to come in the last couple of weeks of August. I'm going to assume something got back to the governor's office that said they need to do something with public transit. They need to find a way to ease what's going on in the island, and public transit may be a solution. They reached out to myself and Scott Abadesian. Scott informed me that there was a discussion that was had with Ed Roberge some years ago. As I said in my report to the council back in January, we have agreed to nothing. This is something that's coming forward as a possibility to address a number of items that face the island during our busy season. As Scott said, if a decision is not made, then that's fine. That's a decision that we need to make. A decision to make, not to make a decision. If folks do not want to explore this pilot program this summer, then we don't have to explore it. The folks want to delay it for a year, I'm sure RIPTA and Scott Avedisian is open to continue the dialogue through the summer into next year. So that's all, I'm saying. We're not trying to force anything into anyone. What we're doing is trying to address a number of concerns that have come up and that have been raised as it relates to last summer. As I've said to the council when I was interviewed, they made it clear they wanted a different summer this coming summer than they had last summer. We're trying and we're looking at a number of different venues. We're not done. Someone brought up one-way streets. That was in the 2004 report at Old Harbor. I'm exploring not doing exactly that, but also doing different closure of streets or making a street a one-way. I haven't finished that. It's only been 120 days. I'm trying to catch up and get some things before the council and before the folks so that we could have a summer that we enjoyed compared to what was last summer. And I've heard that over and over again, not only from the council, but the people on the island. They do not want a repeat of last summer. And I'm here to work with you folks to get there. So we may have to come up with different options. We may have to look at different things. So, like I said, this has been a great discussion, and RIPTA has been great with us and continuing with the dialogue. And I know RIPTA, I know Scott, if a decision is not to go forward with it this summer, he's not going to say we can't continue the dialogue. It's just not his personality, and it's not the way he operates.
Thank you for the clarification to my question. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Marianne. Jim and Brad, two last comments on the subject, because we are going to have, all right, well, I got someone new in here that wants to comment. Hold on, Jim and Brad. 741-2331. 741-2331. If you can unmute yourself and say who you are. You're listening.
Hi, Andre. Do you hear me?
Yes. Who is this?
This is Rob Dalber calling with Gloria at
Hi,
my
Rob.
side here.
Hi, Rob. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've been at the taxi business for, I guess, 35 years now. And what everybody's got to keep in mind is last summer was a nightmare for everybody. But, Rodinoni said it best, 14 cabs, or 18 maybe, instead of 32. That's a big difference. Just keep that in mind, everybody. Hey, good to talk to everybody, too. See you later.
Bye, Rob. Thanks for your input. Appreciate it. All right, go ahead, Brad.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you, Andre, and thank you, Marianne. And I would like to hear from Scott that this is an option that is can be delayed to future years. I don't think judging last year because of the pandemic or what might be this season is the way, or to be even rushed into something. I think Billy brought some good points up. I think everyone did, and that's what I would like to hear some of the other things that are being explored as well that Marianne is indicating as well. But again, thank you, and I look forward to getting together with you as well. I just don't want to rush into something because of the pandemic. It's not going to be a lot different this year, I don't think. And honestly, I think this island, with all the negative feedback that we got publicity-wise for certain things, Bad News Sells, being a former news person, an advertising person, this island did the taxi drivers, the business owners, everyone did a phenomenal job, all things considered. And considering up until the end of October, we had very, very limited COVID cases out here, and I think that'll maintain. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Jim Rondinoni.
Yeah, how you doing? Just one more comment. Again, I want to thank everybody for, all their input, comments. The one other thought I had was, if anybody came out here last summer, I believe some did from the state, and they looked at the transportation, you could say it was kind of like chaos because of the COVID. Couldn't they wait until we're at full strength this summer, and then have somebody from the state come out and say, oh, they are doing this, they are able to accomplish this and accomplish that. I don't think we need RIPTA. So couldn't you hold off if we can have a full complement of taxis this summer, maybe even be allowed to up the capacity to 15 passenger and see if we're able to accomplish all of these proposals that RIPTA has put forth? That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ben. Go ahead, Sven.
Thanks, Andre, and really good input from everybody. I do want to end, or at least my final comment is I want to thank Marianne and Allison for bringing ideas forward. This idea didn't just start in the last 6 months. We had many discussions with Ed Roberts, we've mentioned many times, and even previous to that. So I think having discussions in front of everybody at a work session is exactly what these are for, and hearing from people. And I look forward to the meeting on the 9th. And I really appreciate RIPTA being here, bringing ideas forward, and we'll decide over the next few weeks. But thank you, Marianne and Allison, for getting this to a point where we're discussing data and facts versus just ideas. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, I see no more hands up. We will be taking this up again on the 9th. I want to thank Scott and there he is, Greg, for joining us tonight. And I'm sure Marianne, and we'll be along the way. We'll let you know any developments on our end. And like I said, we really appreciate you reaching out to us on this topic. And we'll be talking. I guess we'll see you next week.
And Marianne, I will send that out to you in the mail tomorrow, the emails that we got.
I will not send you the ones that I got, Scott. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the discussion of proposed changes or changes to the Town of New Sham General Ordinances, Article 4, Section 876 through 895, governing motorized cycle rental. This was a topic that came up the other night with regard to the moped discussion. And I think Keith sent us something on that. I don't know if Marianne, if you're familiar, or if Keith want to take the lead.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Okay, Keith, go ahead.
I'll just sort of walk you through it. What my thinking was. I think first of all, we have a number of licensees who have had years, literally decades, to self-regulate on safety issues, and they haven't. I mean, I don't think you can make an argument that they have, and that has manifested itself in 2 consecutive summers where the data are just, if I had hair, my hair would be standing on end. We have, 3 kind of undeniable things going on. One is we have clearly a public health and safety crisis that's been generated. We have a community that is demanding that we step up to the plate and do something significant. And I would argue that we have a substantial liability problem. We've spent a lot of time worrying about suing in one direction, but insufficient time worrying about being sued from another direction, and that is this. We have, I believe, a responsibility to mitigate potential liability that the town may have now that we have seen the kind of carnage that we've seen over the last few years, and Mark Emanuel can say for decades. And if you look at our ordinance, we really do not regulate as to safety. We have a 1-section piece of our ordinance that really talks about how tall people are and whether they can reach the rear foot pegs. And I would argue that it is well within our power and not only within our power, but essential to mitigate the town's risks, that we do something here. So that was the spirit in which I wanted to have this conversation, and the spirit in which the document that the draft that I sent around, or that Molly sent around to everybody, was crafted. So here are the things that I'm suggesting. First of all, and this goes to something that Martha's been talking about for probably at least a year. When the license application is made, the applicants, license holders, should be required to provide plat map for where they're going to be renting the scooters, and a plat map for where they're going to be training. Period. That's, I mean, we just hear, there's just so much anecdote floating around about whether someone has too many, has more than their share of mopeds, whether someone is leasing somebody's and putting them on the wrong piece of property and all that. I think Martha's been making this point for a long time, and I happen to think she's right, and that's an essential part of our sort of regulatory ambit. Second thing, I think if we're going to do the things we ought to be doing in terms of enforcement, and I think Mary Ann's committed to that. I know Andre has been passionate about that. I think all of us have been passionate about that. I think we need to update our fees regularly to reflect license fees, to reflect the kind of resources that the town is putting into regulating one particular type of business. I think that's not an unreasonable thing, and that's what I put in there. I think one of the things that has stuck with me from many things, from Mary Ann's very helpful document, an essential document, is the additional problem on Weldon's Way with delivery trucks. And I believe it's possible that one way to deal with that is to change shift the hours from 9 until whenever to 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. I think these mopeds should be back by 7 o'clock. I just think the later it goes in the day, the more likely we are to have intoxicated operators. I mean, we all know this. It's not, there's nothing groundbreaking about that. And if we don't start until 10, that gives Mary Ann, the police, it's Bill McComb, Interstate, et cetera, Cisco, whomever, the opportunity to say, okay, you get off the ferry, you get off the first ferry, and you make your deliveries on Weldon's Way before 10. On safety, what I've suggested here are a half dozen things, thereabouts. First of all, each licensee shall be responsible for instructing each person renting a motor scooter in the proper operation of the vehicle in the form of presenting a comprehensive training video, followed by a questionnaire on best operational practices and relevant town ordinances. Nothing earth-shaking here. It's making sure that this is just not a situation where it's, are you going to fall over, is what constitutes the training.
Keith, can
Sorry,
I?
oh
Keith,
God, please, yeah.
Yeah, no. I'm just wondering if the clerk's office can share this on the screen like they did on the last one. If they,
That's a great idea.
I'll give you clerks. Is that possible? I'll give you a minute, because I have mine in my clerk base here. I don't have a hard copy of it. I didn't print one.
Thank you, Andre. That's a good.
I'm trying to switch between screens and.
Actually, that's a great idea, Andre, because I think it was emailed to us, not on Clerkbase.
Right.
It was emailed to us about
Just
less
give me
than
a
an hour
moment to
before
put it
the
up.
meeting.
Thank you.
Andre, am I coming through?
You were a little
I really do not like getting things this close to a meeting time. We've talked about this before. We have rules for other people, and I mean, I've got it. I did have a chance to read it, but very quickly and right before the meeting, and I just that I'm really tired of all hearing about respect and not getting it.
Thank you, Martha. And we will have this. We will, I spoke to Keith about this today. He was unclear as to the rules, how we've been operating. And to be fair, I don't think we ever sent out a memo saying, if you want things on the agenda, please have the supporting documents.
I am genuinely sorry about that. I didn't realize that was what I was supposed to do. Sorry about that.
Common courtesy.
Keith, don't apologize. We're finally jumping from the kids' table to the adults' table. So let Keith keep speaking.
Hey, Mark, a little respect on your part too would be nice. Okay, so we got this in front of us. Let's move on.
As I said, each licensee required to instruct each person in the form of a comprehensive training video, followed by a questionnaire on best practices and relevant town ordinances, which would give us confidence that the people who are renting these things understand how you operate them and what the rules are. We've all had the experience of sort of saying, why are these people driving by us on dirt roads? Marianne is doing signage on that. I think that's essential too. There are a lot of things, but second is that each licensee is required to administer a supervised test drive on the licensee's premises or on premises leased for such purposes. The next one is that each licensee shall provide to the clerk and potentially to the volunteer fire department or fire marshal a plan for the off-season storage of its motorized motor scooters. And gasoline powered motor scooters shall not be stored in any building except where they're permitted. Next, each licensee shall ensure that no passenger seated behind a driver is, by virtue of age, size, or physical limitation, unable to be safely carried on a motor scooter, and shall ensure that no person renting a motor scooter shall carry any passenger in front of the driver. This is a nightmare we have all seen. And it strikes me that we are not doing a good enough job of educating on this. And then finally, that each licensee shall ensure that no person seeking to rent a motorized scooter, no person seeking to be a passenger on a motor scooter is intoxicated upon rental. Furthermore, each licensee will be required to install an ignition interrupt switch or a similar device, which is designed to ensure that renters cannot operate a scooter while intoxicated. Those were the things I came up with. Happy to go through them.
Andre?
Sorry, I was muted.
Like me. Me and Martha, we have problems. No problem speaking, but just problems with our mute buttons.
What I was going to say is I would love, maybe Marianne or I think to Keith's point, all of these are great discussion points. I want to understand if there are any feedbacks from the town manager or others as to, are some of these like a safety inbounds, out of bounds? I think some of the other ones like ours, I think clearly are inbounds, but I mean, are there pushes. I'm not saying we shouldn't discuss them and try and forward them anyway, but just sort of get a read as to, are any of these quote unquote less inbounds than others? And
Who's that question for, Sven?
Marianne, or I guess Kathy, but I'm just making sure that if we're going to spend an hour and a half, I'm making this up, on safety number 2, that somebody's not going to come and say the state won't let us regulate X or something. I'm just making sure that that at least we know that it's going to be a slog. Let me put it that way.
Kathy? Marola?
Well, I think Keith is following the proper process under the charter. He's a member of the council. He's proposing a new ordinance, and then the charter states that the proposal shall be reviewed by the council and thereafter submitted to the town solicitor for an opinion as to form and legality. So we're on step 1 right now, and then the council will vote if you want to send it to the solicitor for opinion as to form and legality. And I'm just opening this myself, so I need some time to digest it. But I think that, as I said, I think Keith is following the proper process, which the charter requires.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And as a reminder, I sent the charter this past weekend. I did send the charter as relates to ordinance. It's Article 409 to all the councilors and highlighted it. So I agree with Kathy. We're in step 1 of what's this 2 or 3 step process.
Thank you.
Mark, go ahead.
Regarding Keith's document, this is the document I was hoping to get last month. And with as much respect as I can come up with right now, for the previous document that we waited for, this is what we should be addressing, and maybe throwing the group's memo in the circular file. If we start comparing, one of the recommendations they asked for moped owners to do. Remember, these are moped owners who have been getting the carrot for decades and no stick. Number 1 was to replace current horns with car horn. Where is the logic there? Closed shoes. When I was scraping moped victims off the ground, I certainly wasn't looking at their recent pedicure. I was looking to see whether they had gross deformity in their extremities.
Mark,
whether
Mark, hold on one second. We're discussing, you're going back to last week's discussion. I mean, we're discussing
a continuation of last week's discussion, Andre.
We're talking about Keith's document right now. And
I'm comparing it to the original document that I have every reason to continue speaking on this, Andre.
You can continue speaking on it, but it's not on this. It's not.
I'm
point of order.
The priorities here. You know how much time we've wasted on this and how much expense to the town to subsidize 5 businesses? No.
We're talking about an ordinance here, a change in ordinance, and you said
that's what I'm talking about too. Let me proceed, please, Andre?
And you could have easily put that forward a month ago, so anybody could have.
It's evolving as we go along. We finally have something better than what
you wanted to see a month ago. Well, great.
Andre, we have something significantly better than what we got initially.
They're 2 different things. They're 2 different things. The ordinance is the law. The other is a supplemental agreement.
Mark, I'm going to let you continue, but go ahead.
Can I make a point of order though? I hear Mark can obviously say what he wants, but I really would like to focus in on. I think we're going to have a long discussion on these points with Keith, and I think that's great. And I do really want to focus on the ordinance, which is what I think the agenda item is. So Mark, if there's any way just to really focus on 879, 884, whatever we're going to go, that would help me out a lot.
Can we all agree to throw this original document or memo in a circular file and start again?
Let's not even, I don't think there's a need to go there.
I think they work together hand in glove, Mark, in my opinion. I think there are things that are in that document that are not in the ordinance. And I think we need to do both. That's my opinion.
At least for today, personally, I would love to focus on starting with 879, and it's only at the top of the list. That's why.
Okay, then what I would like to see is a more vocal town solicitor who will tell me not so much what we can't do, but what we can do. So I'd like for Kathy to be more a part of this discussion.
Okay.
Any questions?
Well, I'm here. I just got this paper, and I will certainly do what I'm required to do. I'll go through each item and have it for you in terms of a legal opinion.
Your input last time was measured in seconds. So I think you should be more a part of this. And again, aggressively more a part of this. I don't want to be told.
What you were discussing last time were policy agreements that were being made with meetings. Those aren't legal issues. Now you're presenting me with something, an ordinance, and I will go through each item, which, as I said, I just got, and will let you know on an item by item basis what the legal situation is with each one.
Okay, and I want to be told, or I don't want to be told what we can't do. I want to be told what we can do, even if it means going back upstate and being front page above the fold of the Providence Journal yet again.
Mark, do you want to start with the ordinances?
How about starting with exactly what Keith's sending that to her and seeing what we can do, not what we can't do. I like all of them. I don't like things like a safety committee. We've tried that ad nauseum. Unless,
so sorry, Andre, if you don't mind. On 879D, do you have any? So it says here, and each license application shall include the plat lot for the license proposed to rent it scooters, as well as where to train. Any thoughts on that one?
yes, and I think we should initiate a show cause hearing immediately on I think we should initiate a show cause hearing immediately on the business that has not been complying.
But let's hold on to that thought. That's a big thought. I got it. But on this one right now,
not a problem.
Okay, so you're good with D. Any edit?
I'm good with all of these, Sven, to save some time.
Okay, because Andre, do you mind if I speak?
No, go ahead.
Okay, because I think Mark brings up a lot of really good points, but I think we are really focused on this, and I do want to make sure that we get to. Oh, thank you, Millie or Sean. I do think we want to get to this. I really like the idea of the training. Right now, I believe they need to show what provide what plat and lot the rentals are coming from. And Mark pointed out an issue that occurred in the past and a show cause hearing discussion. But we haven't had a plat lot description of training. And here's why I think that's a really good one. And I like all of them, but that's a good one. It was discussed at the last meeting that one of the operators will, or at least what I heard was one of the operators is proposing to continue or have training done on where they rent the scooters and potentially on the lot with the Seacrest. And that's fine with me, but as I then think about what is a rental and how does the ordinance go to where you can rent from plat lot, I think then that would actually be suddenly quote unquote renting or training on another lot. And that gets a little awkward to me. So I think having both where the rental occurs and where the training occurs is very smart to me, because if somebody has 2 lots and they want to train on one of them because it's more apropos, I'm fine with that, but I want to know it so that there's no question later that we go back to them and say, wait a minute, you're renting and working over here. You know, is that legit? So I think it helps the operators, actually. I think it helps all of us as we get down later to making sure that the rules are being followed. I think it helps all of us know where rentals are taking place and where training may be taking place. Thank you.
Okay, Andre?
Martha, go ahead.
Okay, we already had language on this, and it referenced the ownership, zoning classification, identification of the exact location of the premises, a GIS map of the premises to which the vehicles are rented or leased. And the only difference, I think the only addition you need to that proposed language is the training. If you want, I don't like to use the word training.
Yeah, I know.
But
education.
This is language that we had agreed to last year, and it just didn't happen. So that's the only change to the I think Mary Ann provided us the ordinance, and it's a redlined ordinance. And that one thing, because the GIS map was important. I was pushing for that because I think we've got to establish a baseline, and the plat maps in and of themselves just do not give it to you.
I'm with you, Martha.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Martha. If I didn't say clearly enough that this was based on your work and last summer, because I had put this in there hoping that you would you have more technical expertise on this stuff.
No, that's not what I'm saying. We already have this written. It's in the redlined version of the ordinance that Mary Ann gave us this week, I think. And the only thing that needs to be added to make that is which has nothing to do with the report. These are two entirely separate items, and we can't conflate them. The only thing that needs to be added is a better word for training. I won't go with training. It's got to be something better than that.
Let's work on that, because I
Marianne?
agree. It's a good point.
Marianne?
Yes.
Point of, did you send out that red line version, and do I have it?
I don't think I was the one that sent it. I was looking for it right now, and so I can read what the language is.
I mean, I think Keith is bringing up the point of in the licensure, rental and training being specified, like Martha just said. And if it's
Okay,
already,
I can read it. I've got it in front of me. This is a proposal. It was already.
oh, where did you get
added
it
to
in front of you, Martha?
I have a hard copy. I got it in the town hall. I don't know where it came from.
I know, but I'm just wondering if we all have it. That's what
Yes, it was a hard copy part of your packet. It's also
Okay.
attached to clerk base.
No, beautiful. So that's the same one I have hard copy of that I have here. Thank you, Millie.
It's the top of it's the page that includes the license application. And I mean, right now, most people are putting the plat lot down, but it's a paragraph that's immediately following item 6. It's the second part of, it's the operating location specificity that's added to number 5, which is operating location.
Got it. Now thank you, Millie. I got it.
Excuse me, Martha. Our
Right
clerk base, even though it's underlined, our clerk base shows that those two changes, because I remember we worked on them last January, were adopted on February 19th, 2020, according to the clerk's office.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, so I think that those are already incorporated in the ordinance based on the information I have from the clerk's office and the votes of the council.
I'm sure that's right. I was sick all last February. And because
can I just ask?
Hang on, Keith. Look, Martha, you done?
Sorry about that.
Hang on, Keith.
No, it didn't come through when we got when the license app, when the renewals came through. I asked about it because the maps were not included, and that was my understanding at that time that had never gone through. If it went through, great. You still have to you need to come up with a better word for training and add it to it.
Okay. Keith,
I
go ahead.
didn't realize that had passed. I was working off of the ordinance that's on ClerkBase, and perhaps there's a supplement that I didn't look at that embodied the change. So I'm sorry about that, but I just wanted to say I agree with Martha. Training is a misnomer
I'll
here.
see it.
Go ahead, Tim.
Keith, if you, I don't know if you have it, it's on page 3 of the packet, the hard copy packet.
No, I thought I have to say this is, I'm so glad we raised this, because are there things in the packet that are different from what's on ClerkBase?
It shouldn't be.
No.
Because I've been working off of ClerkBase, and I'm happy to come by to pick up the packet, but I assumed it was redundant to ClerkBase.
That's correct.
Maybe I could help with that. This is Kathy.
Yeah,
If you,
it's the amendments.
if you look at the ClerkBase, you'll see the revised ordinances, and then you'll see a section called Amendments to Code, and there's an index in there. And I don't know, 6th or 7th one down is motorized cycle rental, and it shows you the amendment to that ordinance that was adopted on February 19th, 2020.
So if you would like
That's
me
really
to
helpful.
read
Thank
what
you,
that
Kathy.
says.
That's not where I was looking.
So this particular thing, it's under number 5, and with the application, the actual application, it says operation location. The operating location shall be identified by submitting a site plan drawn to an accessible engineering scale containing parcel identify, tax assessors map and plat lot, ownership, zoning, classification, and identification of the exact location of the premise in a GIS map of the premise where the vehicles are to be rented or leased.
So following that, I think, Keith, if it says here, the operating location and separately the quote unquote training location, finding a better word in that quote, I think that may be the fastest way to do this. Because then it would have 2 basic, or we copy that and just call it the quote unquote training location, agreeing with Martha on wording, but I mean, we could just copy that.
Go ahead, Marianne.
How about something along the lines, it says rented and leased and all related moped operations?
I do want to be very clear though, Marianne,
Okay.
As Martha knows, sometimes with the past, even the liquor licenses, while it seems very simple,
Anybody?
Martha is.
Hey, Martha, can I? Go ahead. Sorry, Sven.
What?
Go.
I was just going to ask Martha on a. I mean, it is part of this section, but what if we did basic motor scooter proficiency training?
What about driver education?
Yeah.
Well, that's my whole point. That it you can't get off. You can't. No one would go in and think they could ride a bicycle without knowing how to ride a bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said before, I meet a lot of people who ride mopeds who are not the demographic that everyone else talks about.
Mm-hmm.
I meet people who stay at the Surf and the Spring House, and the ones who wonder why others are beeping at them. And so it's very much across. You always see what's really wrong, but I just don't. I'll just fold on that because I don't think anybody's going to come up with anything better.
I do like having some modifier like proficiency in it, whether it's proficiency education, proficiency, because I think there has to be a fundamental determination that there's some level of proficiency before these vehicles go out onto our streets.
Look, it's proficiency testing.
Yeah, yeah, I like that.
For right now, can we go with that? For now? I like proficiency testing.
Let's send that to the solicitor so we can keep moving forward.
Yeah. I think if I can, Andre, Marianne, my suggestion would be for simplicity, unless you and Kathy come up with a better way, is I would take that whole paragraph and copy it almost. And so it's another one that says instead of the operating location shall be identified, I would say the quote, proficiency testing, end quote, location shall be, and then blah, 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 blah. I mean, I'm just wondering if that's simpler to just literally copy it. And it's very clear that we're not, it's very clear that it's not like, oh, well, maybe sort of, kind of. And we have to get two maps, right? So even though, and I'm going to make this up, even though one of the operators has the exact same location that they're renting from, as well as their proficiency testing from, they are sending in two GIS maps. And I know I'm being a jerk on that, but I think it clears it up. Thoughts, Marianne?
Let me take the language and play with it. I think we have an understanding as to what you folks are trying to do.
Thank you.
You want all areas identified that they would be operating their business from.
Thank you.
Can I have a phone number here, 466-9695 with a hand up that's been up for quite some time. I'm just wondering if that's still a valid question, still a valid hand up. I don't want to enter. Yeah, 466-9695.
Hi.
Hi, who is this?
This is Julie Conant. Hi, Andre. How are you?
Julie Conant, how are you?
Good. So I just want to comment on some of the training questions. I've actually only been watching recorded meetings, unfortunately, but I'm referring to the January 20th meeting and the January 29th meeting. And in those meetings, the town council were discussing Weldon's Way, and in particular the training of the the moped operators, of the potential moped operators. And I think what was stated was something to the effect that Mike Finnemore was planning to or offering to train behind the Seacrest Inn. I've actually, a couple of the council members have even seemed excited about that. But I'm not so excited as an abutter to the west of both of the properties that abut the Seacrest Inn. And I'm just looking, I'm actually kind of curious why no one's talking about zoning or HDC. Maybe you are behind the scenes, but I'm not hearing that. Because I would think that whether we call it proficiency testing or whatnot, I would think that would have to be a permitted use on the Seacrest Inn property. And as best I know, the Seacrest Inn is a licensed rooming house. So I think, I know you're trying to get some broad language as far as, I think maybe Martha stated something like, or someone stated something like, no, maybe it was the town manager, about all things related to moped rentals or whatnot. But I think that would set a very bad precedent. I would like to see proper zoning and HDC review if something like that is occurring. Not on the positions or not in the situations where they're already renting, but if they're going to go to a new place like behind the Seacrest Inn, which is a licensed rooming house, and has not had that kind of, I believe that's a residential use right now, I think it should go before HDC and zoning. And so I don't know if this ordinance that you're writing is just for the licensing procedure and the town council's acting as a licensing board, and whether that skirts zoning and HDC. But I feel like zoning and HDC provide us great protections, and they're already on the books, and we don't have to go stepping on toes as far as overreaching the legislation that is set up for the benefit of the moped operators. But I think we need to be very careful with the training sites and make sure that's in line with zoning. And then, for example, I, who was not notified at all about this as the abutter to the only two properties on the west, I would have gotten proper notification had it gone through zoning. So maybe I'm jumping the gun. Maybe zoning would be following next, but I think you're on the eve of issuing licenses, and so I think that is an issue that should be addressed.
Thank you, Julie. I see Keith's got his hand up. Keith, you have a comment on that?
I think Julie raises a good point. There was nothing in my mind, and I don't think anybody else's mind on the council, that contemplated these safety rules being somehow trumping any protections for landowners vis-a-vis zoning or historic district. That wasn't where I was coming from. Frankly, where I'm coming from is they can't train on a public road. And I think we've all agreed to that and agreed that will be a focus of enforcement this summer. But it's also, it's not my job, at least I'll speak only for myself. It's not my job to find a place for Mike Finnemore to train people on these things. That's, so I would assume that if someone were inclined to, pave behind the Seacrest and start running a moped track, they would have to go through whatever land use processes exist. So that's my take on it. Julie, thank you for raising that.
Yes, thanks, Keith. I agree with that.
Appreciate it, Julie. And I agree. I think, all the zoning, I've heard there's a lot of questions out there that still loom, is that, there's talk, there's talk that where Finnemore's renting from was approved for parking for the businesses he has in there, but there's mopeds being stored on there now. So, there's a lot of things that may not be true, but if we can get all this clarified before we walk into this, that'd be appreciated.
Right. That's great. Thanks, Andre.
Thanks, Julie. Next.
So you're going to work with the language on D, 879D, Marianne? Just, is that where we ended up?
I think so.
Great,
that's
terrific.
The consensus of the council.
The second one that I had here is the town shall establish and update a fee for the license that reflects the direct costs associated with the regulation of the moped rental business. I just, it's, look, I think there's consensus among everyone on the council and in the community that the number one priority has to be enforcement. I don't know what form that takes. I don't know whether that's additional staff. I don't know whether that's spot checks that the new police chief decides she or he might want to conduct. I don't profess to be an expert, but I do know that if we're going to be doing more than we have been, there's going to be a cost associated with that. And it is a cost that is unique to the moped rental business, and therefore the fee that's paid to the town should reflect in some manner the cost and effort that goes into the enforcement activity.
That's an excellent idea, Keith. I'm just worried that if we can legally do that, is a license for that business carved in stone upstate on what we can and, more importantly, what we can't charge? Kathy?
Yes, that would be part of the memo that I would issue to you. The fee to be charged for the license is limited by Rhode Island General Law 3119.3-5B1, which says that the town can establish a license fee, but that the fee for the license cannot exceed the sum of $40 per motorized bicycle, motor scooters, or motorized tricycle. I mean, I think that's a good idea to have it increased. And I think your concern is right, Mark, that that's going to be something that we would have to push with the legislature.
Is there, we can have an impact fee too, I think. I think there may be more than one way to skin a cat. And frankly, in my mind, this is not, this is important, but it's not one of my essential items. But, I do think it would be worthwhile to think creatively around how the town can be less out of pocket for a regulatory regime that is unique to this business. So I'd ask people to think about that.
Well, think also, if we could, about eliminating that $20 per moped fee that the health services gets and the fire and rescue gets. And I still strongly consider that blood money. That just causes me to count to 10 constantly, that we're being given that money as somewhat of a payoff for allowing these businesses to continue. So I'd rather see that eliminated and an impact fee or an increase in fee for that license.
Thanks, Mark. Sven?
I would love,
hold on, Sven. Martha, hold on one second. Sven's going to say
Yep.
something.
I would love to have a work session coming up, Marianne and Andre, about, I'm going to use the term commercial tax structures and fees, or we can call it what we want. Because I think this is a big idea, and it doesn't have to necessarily be, it can be a tax or it could be levied in many ways. But if I think about mopeds, there's clearly one set of costs, which we've all been discussing. I'll tell you, I could argue bars have a set of costs that are unique. I can probably argue some other businesses. So I think right now there's no real commercial tax structure or fee structure or appendage structure. And I think that's something that I would love to discuss and start to tackle, because I think there are, not necessarily in a licensed way, but other ways to make sure that the town's costs are proportionally borne by businesses that drive costs. And I shouldn't say business, things that drive costs.
Okay. We can schedule that. Martha? Keith, hold on a second.
Right.
Yep.
Part of it was that what we just said, that it's so broad, but also you can't just pull numbers out of the air and say this is what it costs. You've got to have things you can actually document and quantify, and we can work on that going forward, but I don't think we can go back. We can't go back. And if that's something that you want to try to get in place, but I also think to say that this is the only business in town that puts any cost on the town is disingenuous, because, well, we know if you're downtown at all, you don't have to be downtown. I mean, we all know what goes on. We all just the trash pickup. There's all kinds of things that go on, and people say, well, you get the money from the landing fee. Well, the money from the landing fee doesn't go all that far when you start dividing up into all of the different things that everybody expects to be paid with that. So there are just a boatload of things that have to be taken into account. Conceptually is one thing. The actual specifics are a whole nother ballgame. We're not going to do that in one work session.
Thank you, Martha. Go ahead, Keith.
I agree with what Martha says. Believe me, I wasn't trying to be disingenuous when I was talking about the cost impacts of this particular business, because I do think, when you think about the impact on our community infrastructure of this business, I think, you know, you could make an argument that there are others, but we're only talking about this one right now. What I had originally drafted was actually that we would keep track of it, to Martha's point, and then use it as an infrastructure impact fee the following year. Because I think Martha's right. You can't just willy-nilly say, all right, it's going to be, I don't know, $5,000 a piece or $50,000 a piece or whatever. But you know, we had EMTs from off island out here all summer last year, and they spent a lot of their time attending to problems that were, you know, driven by riders who were not proficient in the use of these vehicles. So, you know, it may be just a long-term thing that we need to talk about, but I think it's important to raise. And, you know, part of this is, I think a lot of these are important to raise in the context of what Andre brought up. That's an essential underlying point to this. He brought it up weeks ago, and that is the focus here. We have some immediate safety things we need to do, in my opinion, but then we also have to set ourselves up well for what is coming in 2022 and the negotiations associated with that, and establishing what our community's principles are going to be heading into that conversation.
Thanks, Keith. Martha, was your phone lighting up there, or?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. Anybody else comment on that topic, on that item? Okay, where were we? Keith, do you want to continue, or?
Sure, whatever you like. I would just ask Kathy, and I'm happy to, you know, try to, I don't know where I would go, but you know, if it's possible, perhaps to talk about the notion of an infrastructure impact fee or infrastructure impact assessment of some sort. I'd be game for that. The next is the hours of operations. I feel like we're, you know, I suggested 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. A lot of that, there's a reflection of my thought on both sides of those numbers. One is, as Marianne and Martha's document points out, it isn't just mopeds on Weldon's Way. It's also delivery of from, you know, to the restaurants and other businesses that either front or back up to Weldon's Way. And you know, it occurred to me that perhaps if we didn't start mopeds until 10 a.m., we could come up with a system that got those deliveries done first thing off the boat, off of the first boat. And then to me, and you know, you guys, Andre, Sven, Martha dealt with this last summer. 8 o'clock seems late to me to have these mopeds out on the road. I actually initially said 5, and then as I was reflecting, 5 is, you know, may well be too extreme, but 7 seems like a reasonable number to me. That's my thought.
Yeah, I can only comment on, you know, the delivery trucks when they get off the boats. The way they're packed, and I believe this is correct, because I do get delivery trucks. The way they're packed before they get on the ferry dictates where they go first. So I'm not sure you could actually say, you know, the Cisco trucks can only be there between, you know, or whatever, 9 and 10 or whatever have you. Excuse me. I believe that's the way that works. It's dictated how they're packed on the mainland. So if all those restaurants down there, I mean, I've seen the trucks down there, with stuff from that would go to Aldo's, but Aldo's, their trucks go behind the building. But you have what the other businesses down like Rebecca's in the back there. If they're not packed at the same time as another business that's close by, that guy's got to go digging around in there. I'm not exactly sure how they're doing, but I do know that's how they're packed.
I was trying to be respectful of a point that was raised in Marianne and Martha's document that I was not fully, basically an assertion was being made by the moped operators that, really the problem is the Cisco trucks. Well, if really the problem is the Cisco trucks, let's try to deal with the Cisco trucks in a comprehensive, in a sane and rational way. I'm fine with these hours regardless of when the Cisco trucks come there, because I feel very strongly that the real problem on Weldon's Way isn't the Cisco trucks, it's the mopeds training. And given that we've gotten rid of moped training on Weldon's Way, maybe we don't even have to do this,
I'm downtown, and the delivery trucks everywhere are a problem. And Lieutenant Dean has been having conversations with the truck managers, owners, whatever, and trying to come up with a better plan for where they can park, where they can offload. I mean, Dodge Street is a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
If you go through town in the summertime, Dodge Street's awful. They park in front of the old Rags building. To this day, I don't know where they're delivering to, but they park there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Weldon's Way. The delivery trucks are an issue. It's across the board.
Thanks, Martha. Mark, do you have?
Yeah, it is multifaceted, but I think the simplest way is to work with the delivery firms, and they pack the truck accordingly. I mean, when I still worked for a plumber, we packed our truck accordingly as we went down the neck. We didn't go one place all the way down the neck and into the west side and then over to the southeast. It just seems to be simple organization. And I like the change in hours for a couple of reasons. Remember, now we talk enforcement, but it's also quality of life on this island that's slowly eroding. And to see those mopeds out even at 9 when they're allowed seems to be way too early. And we all know they're out way before 9 o'clock. And to see them out past 7, where they become even more of a safety issue as the summer lengthens and it gets darker earlier, is a strong reason why we should strongly be considering this time change. I'd like to see that implemented.
Thanks, Mark.
Best thing that's happened tonight, I was muted. Jesus.
I'm
Do you want?
So next step, Kathy's gonna give a point of view, or Marianne. I mean, I think we're all sort of in alignment at changing hours, and we can see how we move forward. Is that the idea?
Great. So on to the safety stuff. First one is each licensee shall be responsible for instructing each person renting a motor scooter in the proper operation of the vehicle in the form of presenting a comprehensive training video, could be proficiency video, followed by a questionnaire on best operational practices and relevant town ordinances. Okay. Second one is
if we're discussing each one, I don't see why that.
Yeah, why not?
Why that isn't an obvious. I mean, I'm good. I like the proficiency video almost better if we're going to keep that line of thought, and I do like proficiency testing.
Second one is each licensee shall administer a supervised test drive to each person renting a motor scooter on the licensee's premises or on premises leased for such purposes. Does that make sense to people? Good. Third one is each
good.
licensee shall provide to the town clerk.
I'm sorry. I was just saying, I said I'm good, but I don't know about anybody else. Sorry.
Keith, you want to continue?
Sure. Each licensee shall provide to the town clerk and to the Block Island Volunteer Fire Department, maybe that's the fire marshal, I'm not sure, a plan for the off-season storage of its motorized motor scooters, and gasoline-powered motor scooters shall not be stored in any building except where permitted. We've all heard the stories about where these things are sometimes stored, and it makes me shiver to think of the fire that could occur downtown with some of the storage practices of these things.
I'm sorry, Keith? Or
yes.
Good.
I mean, we have an ordinance that already says you, I mean, doesn't our ordinance already cover this? Not necessarily in licensing, but in storage of gasoline, etc., within commercial buildings.
Those are some of the things Kathy and I will review, because that's the question I also asked and asked staff to provide me with some documentation on.
Yeah, I just don't want to have it in the license and somewhere else, and next thing you know, there's.
If it's in the, if it's in an ordinance somewhere else, we probably wouldn't recommend not putting it in the license piece of it.
Well, if it's in the ordinance already, probably everybody watching here or will watch this is probably wondering why hasn't it been addressed? Because we know too well what would happen if something happened on Front Street. So yeah, let's prioritize that, because that seems to be a true immediate safety and health issue.
Want me to do the second to last one, Andre?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Each licensee shall ensure that no passenger seated behind a driver is, by virtue of age, size, or physical limitation, unable to be safely carried on a motor scooter, and shall ensure that no person renting a motor scooter shall carry any passenger in front of the driver. I see this too frequently, and I actually have taken to speaking with people who are driving their mopeds this way, and my bet is people like Mark, and I know Julie's on here and is on virtually every EMT call, you know, and others from the rescue squad have seen this as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. The gasoline storage, it was attached to the hard copy of the ordinance. The Article 3 that has the laws on gasoline storage, that's just an FYI.
Thank you, Martha. Sven,
we all have it.
A question is the child in front, or as you review, Marianne and Kathy, I guess, is the child in front a state law? And if it is a state law, can we still have it in the license itself? And meaning, yes, maybe a state law, but this enables us to remove a license for failure. So I guess my question is, can we have it in two places? State law. Thank you.
I may have misunderstood Sven, but this is not in the license document. This is our town's safety ordinance when it comes to motor scooters.
No, I agree. I
could clarify that. I can clarify that. There's absolutely nothing that prohibits the town council from incorporating in its ordinances existing regulations from the state on operation of any vehicle.
Thank you.
And looking at this, it seems to me, you know, I'll do some looking, that I can't imagine that that is permitted under state law, carrying any passenger in front of the driver. So the answer is yes, you can certainly incorporate anything that's already a part of state law.
Thank you. And thank you, Keith.
I'd like to know that state law because I've asked two past police chiefs and never got a definitive answer. And it's a promise I made to Bob Reale years ago to watch over. And it was sad enough we had what we had last summer, the tragic loss of life. But imagine if that was a child. So yeah, I want something definitive on this so that not only we can enforce it, but maybe that should be maybe a suspension of that person who's ever operating the moped. Actually turn the key off and walk back to town. You've surrendered your right to use this moped.
And then finally, each licensee shall ensure that no person seeking to rent a motorized scooter and no person seeking to be a passenger on a scooter is intoxicated upon rental. Each licensee shall install on each motor scooter an ignition interrupt switch or similar device designed to ensure that renters cannot operate a motor scooter while intoxicated. This is basically the ignition interrupt switch that they use for people who have been convicted of DUIs.
I love this.
I mentioned that earlier. I just think that, you know, if you could, I know it's kind of cumbersome, but I think a lot of the problem, you know.
I'd love to know if we can do that, because right now we all agree you need two things to rent a moped, and that is a pulse and a credit card. So this would be one more tool.
You know, Mark, you've said, we've all said a few times, we've talked about the cans. Can we do this? Can we do this? And I just want to make the point again. I think there are things we're bound to do. And if it's the licensees and they're upset with it, we have venues called courts where we can deal with this. And there's a part of me that wants to have this conversation about why any of these things. Now, I'll be really frank with you. This stuff doesn't go nearly as far as I would like. I'm trying to play within the boundaries that have been established, with the fundamental understanding that there are negotiations that are coming up for the 2022 year. But we have an emergency here, a crisis here. And I tried to propose things that are well within our right, I think, and our obligation to try to prevent any more tragedies and to protect the town from liability. Because I'll tell you, I really fear at some point someone is going to get very badly injured again, or God forbid, die on one of these things. And one of the first places their trialers are going to sue is the town for not having modern, safety-driven regulation of these scooters, because we do not have that now.
Hey, can I go back on something?
Go ahead, Mark.
Question. Aren't there, and I don't know anything about this because I have no experience with it. Aren't the regulations on unrestrained children in motor vehicles?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are.
Yes, there are.
Aren't we covered then? Doesn't that cover mopeds?
Martha, I could that's
oh, no, that we've been told from day one that we can't ban mopeds, et cetera, and so forth, because they're registered motor vehicles in the state of Rhode Island. They go under state vehicular laws. And if those are the laws of the state, those are the laws of the state. And it doesn't make any sense at all that they wouldn't apply to a moped. That's just silly.
Yeah, it's a question that went unanswered when I was in my taxi a couple of years ago when I had a child in the back being held by his mother or father and was not in the child seat, that I never got an answer to. So it's the answer's out there. I just haven't heard it yet.
Well, I think a lot of parents know that answer. I don't know it, but as somebody with small children, they'll know the answer.
I believe there was at one point, at a certain age, seatbelts and whatnot. I believe there was a time when Bill McComb was the chief, he was actually running around pulling people over and handing them ice creams, certificates, gift certificates for ice cream, if their kids were buckled in. So I'm not exactly sure that it's a law, but if you are buckled in, back in the day, you would have gotten ice cream.
No, I
That's how
think
we used to take our kids to the ice cream place.
Well, can we just check? Can we just get that clarified? Because I think we may be talking about something that's long been established. There wouldn't be, all these people wouldn't be worrying about having car seats if of a very specific kind and size if these things weren't laws.
We will provide that to you. We'll provide that to you in the memo. There is a law on passengers under 12 years of age on a motorcycle. And we'll give you copies of the law in the memo regarding these proposals.
Because the state law has always got more teeth in it regardless. And the state law applies to any of our, if somebody's in violation of a state law, they're in violation of our law. We don't need to say you can't, I can't even think of a good example, but we don't need our own law if the state already has it. And we don't need our own law with any license across the board. I'm not just talking about mopeds, I'm about liquor licenses, everything.
Question?
Ben. Sound good?
Oh, but if they're tied to the license and the quote unquote penalty is that we can remove the license quickly, my question to Kathy would be, if we have it in the license, there's found at fault, we could pull that license versus having it go into a court process that could take weeks, of which is percentage.
You can't just pull a license. You have to have a show cause hearing.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. Thank you, Martha. I meant have a show cause hearing, and that process, which can happen much faster than going through the system. So that's the only reason I asked earlier about whether we could have these in the license as well as state rules. And I think Kathy said we could, because that enables us to have start the process up about licensure, which would be show cause, etc.
If they're in violation of the state law, they're in violation. I think Mal Grant told me years ago when we kept getting this blowback that the local police couldn't do conservation laws, and Mal Grant was the head of Fish and Wildlife at the time. And he said, Martha, they're state laws. It doesn't matter who's enforcing them. They're state laws. You don't pick and choose which ones you want to enforce.
Right. But what I asked earlier and would love an answer on is,
yes. But I don't think you need, if it's in violation of a state law, that's a cause. You have to prove it.
But the rules. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
The rule is under state law that licenses can be pulled for violation of any provision of that chapter or provisions of any ordinance established by the town council enacted pursuant to the provisions of the chapter. So what I need to do is look at the ordinances. There may be a general sentence about complying with state law. If there isn't, I don't think it would be a bad thing, to put that in there to have an extra reason for suspending a license.
I hear Martha, and I got it, but I really like the reinforcing. I mean, I know it may be doubled up, but I don't know. I don't see any reason not to.
I just want to be sure that we don't do anything that's in any way conflicting with the state law, and that's why I was asking the question about the age of the children and all. And if the law, if the
Thank
state
you, and I
already has
agree
it
with
in
you
place-
on conflict.
If the state already has it in place, I don't want to be rewriting it.
But I
Okay, so I
don't
think-
mind.
I think we don't have to argue about that now. I think Kathy will let us know when she.
Yeah.
Mark, do you have a question?
So we have in section 8-90 of our ordinances entitled safety, that each licensee shall comply with section 8-24 of this ordinance and all applicable laws and regulations of the state and its agencies. So I think we're pretty good in that. So a violation of an applicable law and regulation of the state would constitute a violation of our ordinance, which would permit us to have a show cause hearing to suspend and or revoke a license.
Kathy, was that in the amendment from last year?
Actually, it's in 8-90, which was amended in 2006.
Oh, okay.
And that's
It's in the packet.
It's also on the screen.
I just would say for the record that I'm actually not uncomfortable restating in our ordinance because who has seen these things complied with? I'm sorry, I like the idea of having it in two places, certainly not violating state law, but I'm okay with a belt and suspenders on this stuff. That's just my philosophical opinion.
I just want to be sure it's the same law, because that's
Right.
the last thing we need are conflicting reasons to be doing something. That's not going to get us anywhere.
I agree. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, we can wrap this up on Keith's wonderful suggestions. And the way I'll do it is to charge our town solicitor to come up with any means possible to get something significantly improved done with the matter we have before us. Kathy, this is the #1 issue. So I'm asking you to find any legislation, rule, regulation, whatever it takes to accomplish what we need to accomplish to take care of the problem that we now have. Now, I have a couple of suggestions that are kind of day 2 improvements. And I'm wondering whether that group that got together and gave us the original memo still meets and can bring this back to the moped owners and hopefully not have to go through any litigation to get it, because they're kind of passive and can be implemented really quickly. Do you still meet, Marianne, Martha, and the rest of the gang?
Oops. Yes, we do. We're meeting on Tuesday.
Okay, let me give you 2 items, please. I think that can be done in day #2. The first one is I've always wanted an accident exit survey. Now, so many people love data. I don't need the data personally. I've seen it firsthand. But for those who need data, here's a perfect opportunity right after an accident scene to gain information from either the person who was injured or anyone associated with that accident. I think it would speak volumes about how subpar the preparation is before that person is allowed to rent Mr. Moped. Secondly, on the back of mopeds, where that shingle basket is now, or that milk carton, it is now used for advertising for the moped businesses. I'm calling for them to remove and replace that with signage of sorts, or whatever you want to call it, that will subliminally help all those involved with that moped pack, because they're usually in pack. It would say something as simple as no mopeds on dirt roads. Use horn only for emergency. Things like that. So as this pack of mopeds, which we all know they travel around in, leapfrog each other, as we all know they do, they can subliminally be reinforced on just what the rules and regulations are while they're riding that moped. Again, these are day two improvements that can be made, and I'd like to see whether the moped owners would welcome them.
Can you go back to number 1 and explain exactly what you're looking for? I'm not following it.
I've done it at rescue scenes. I've asked the poor person who got injured or the poor person who was involved with the accident if they knew that they weren't supposed to be on this dirt road. Were they educated with that? Was that part of their training? Did they know that child wasn't allowed in the front? Now, a lot of times they'll answer what they probably should or know they have to answer. But more times, well, they're kind of honest. We were never. And I can see it in their face, they're sincere. They never told me I wasn't allowed on the dirt road. I wasn't told my child couldn't be on the front. This is data that would be very helpful to see whether that so-called training that's being done, or that we want to improve on, is being done.
Thanks, Mark. Marianne, you got that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there any action we need to take on this after the discussion, or does anybody have any comments on this? Further comments?
I can say one comment on the second part of Mark's suggestion. I think putting more words is a mistake only because you don't want people distracted. You only want to put things like, narrow roads, curvy roads, be careful. Something that's simple and easy. And the horn thing is already on the mopeds. That's part of the town ordinance. Japan people don't know either. And the clothes, just as a point of information, I think it's important that people understand that this is not relevant to the conversation at hand, but the closed-toed shoes came from the doctor.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to second guess the doctor.
Right. And I think
that was his idea. That was his.
And I think people need to be reminded or keep in mind that, there are others that are in on these conversations other than Martha and Marianne. One is the doctor's there, Paul Dean's there, there's police there, there's the doctor, and these aren't just suggestions pulled out of thin air. So that's all I'll say on that.
It was also in the doctor. The position paper that the doctor submitted to us, it was also in that.
Thank you, Martha. Mark, go ahead.
I am not thinking of putting the front page of the Block Island Times on the back of a moped. I'm thinking very simple signage. No mopeds on dirt roads. Horn used emergency only. This subliminally will teach these people, hopefully, of what they can and, more importantly, what they can't do.
Thanks, Mark. Sven?
Thinking about the next meeting, and I know we've obviously got March 1st. Is this something we want to add to the agenda for the 9th? I'm just thinking about sequencing and timing, how, and I don't know how, if Kathy and Marianne can turn it around by then, or what's the timing?
Well,
to Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong. For an ordinance change, it cannot be no less than 3 weeks from when the council decides to hold the meetings. Is that correct, Kathy? We lost her.
She's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking and I'm muted. The charter specifies the manner by which any town ordinance has to be amended, and it's advertised at least 3 weeks prior to the hearing by the council.
And then the hearing happens, and is there a period before effect?
Not yet.
Yeah, hold on.
Sven, what was your question?
In other words, I'm trying to think, we said we would revisit the licensing, moped licensing on March 1st. So 3 weeks, if I get it right, is like the 8th. So I'm just trying to figure out backwards, is there any way or how do we figure this out?
Well, I would check a legal review, and Kathy and Mary Ann going through it. As soon as they're done with it, we can put it on an agenda, or we can have another meeting. It's up to you guys. I think right now we pass it off to Mary Ann and Kathy.
Oh, no, I'm with that, but I guess what I'm trying to get to and is if I'm looking at a calendar right now, and I'm trying to figure out if we need to have this ordinance in place by the 1st, in theory, or we figure out timing. I'm just trying to figure out how we get this ordinance in place, assuming that we all like it and vote on and pass it. Then there's a 3-week period. Is there a way to get it in place before March 1st? And if not, when can we get it in place? And how do we align that with the licensing? So all I'm trying to do is back up from
March 1st.
Or we have to move that meeting to March 5th, or, but I'd rather have that dialogue now than on March 1st, have the same storm we just had.
Well, we have to approve the ordinance. We have to approve the final language.
Of course.
And then you have to have the lead time for the paper. So next week is the earliest it could possibly be printed. And that's tight. And then if you've got 3 weeks, go to the 26th.
Is that 3 weeks or is that 2 weeks?
I think that would be the, what day is it today? It's only the 3rd today. If it were printed the 12th, the 19th, and the 26th.
3 weeks would be the 5th. If it's printed on the 12th to 19th is 1 week, 19th, 26th is 2 weeks, 26th to March 5th is 3 weeks. That's the calendar I'm seeing.
That's the calendar.
Okay, the 12th because the 12th wouldn't count as the first week. I'd like to be advertised 3 times, or 3 times, 3 weeks. Is it 3 times prior? I think I'm confusing this with a different regulation. There's nothing to do with the town.
Right. It can't be. The hearing cannot be held no less than 3 weeks. I think the language is. Let me look at it.
It's 3 weeks from the date of posting.
Yeah.
Why didn't that damn Charter Revision Commission take care of this?
I was doing it. Yeah, I think we figured that out, didn't we?
That won't be in effect either, so don't worry about it.
Sorry.
It would be freaking June.
So my question is it, hey guys, do we move the licensing to March 5th meeting, which means that we can vote on a new assuming Martha's comment, assuming you like the language, assuming we can pass it, assuming it gets advertised, and is the Block Island Times the only vehicle to advertise, or could we start advertising it earlier in the Projo or something? I'm literally, Andre, just trying to figure out sequencing.
Block Island Times is paper of record.
Yeah. Can I make a suggestion right now?
Absolutely.
Instead of making this decision right now here, let Kathy and I work on it. When we come back to you, we'd have a better timeline and calendar. I just hate to have you agree to say March 5th when it can't be March 5th. We'll reach out to the Block Island Times, see how far in advance they need it and stuff like that. And that way you have a better timetable to work on.
I agree with that. And I also think our sense of urgency is, while important, if we develop a consensus around what our safety ordinance ought to look like, then I think, we have perhaps some flexibility in terms of sequencing things, for me anyway.
So are we adding this to the meeting on the 9th, Marianne? Is that what you're suggesting?
No.
Oh.
I'm not sure if I think we can, but I'm not sure if we can get the work done that we need to get done in that time frame. Because the 9th is Tuesday, so we have a couple of work days to get this banged out. Maybe we can.
Can we put it on the agenda and then decide whether the
We
work
can put
has
on
been
a,
done?
that's why I said, put on the agenda and let's things play out.
We're all pulling in the same direction here,
What is what is actually, what would be impacted as far as the license renewals go? Because we already have the plat lot. A lot of that's already, the better part of that is done already, and a lot of this is safety that's separate and apart from the license renewal, is it not? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. I think we want to ensure, and this would be a good question for Kathy. I want to ensure that these rules apply to licensees this year. So, in other words, if there's a sequencing issue that involves, if we don't pass this before we issue the licenses, this doesn't apply to people who have previously been granted licenses. If we, that concerns me. So that's my only issue. I don't know enough about whether that's a risk, and I would ask that we get an opinion on that, because God forbid we do all of this work, pass an ordinance, 3 days after the licenses have been renewed, and there's a claim made that our new regulations do not apply because the licenses were issued before we passed them.
I guess that was my question.
That is a definite concern.
Okay, thank you.
But if we pass the safety that's not tied directly to the license.
I'd like all the safety things to be tied myself.
Well, I know we're saying two different things.
I'm sorry, Martha. I apologize for misunderstanding.
Andre, have we had zero public input here? Nobody's interested?
I see no hands up.
Wow.
I think you would also see them if they were up, don't you?
Yep. No.
No? No, there's no. You want me to start asking people?
No, I just don't want anyone to get moped fatigue.
Oh, don't worry about that.
I think we're already there.
Perfect. Are we good? We moving on? Or do we need to make a motion?
Can I ask a question, Martha? What's the average lag time between when the paper needs something and when it can be published? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. It's new management over there.
Be nice.
My deadline is I always had a little more flexibility, but they always did scramble to get things in. But you needed to give them an idea of how much it was going to be ahead of time, how many column inches and all. I think they say Tuesday, but it's really Wednesday. You'd have to talk to the paper.
Okay, we'll check that out. Thanks.
I just give them a column. That's all I do. I don't even edit it anymore.
And I would point out that our charter does say unless provided for by state law or its terms, every ordinance shall take effect 7 days following the date of passage. So we need to make it clear that the ordinance goes into effect on the day of its passage.
Okay. Are we ready to, oh, I see a hand up. 860-799-0871. If you'd like to unmute yourself and state who you are, we'd love to hear your comment.
Hi, guys. It's Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi. I'm sorry I got on 5 minutes late, but I hear you're talking about ordinances, and I wondered if it is the ordinance was related to the mopeds, and if so, if they had been read out loud on the call.
We have been discussing them. What do you mean read out loud on the call?
Well, the language of the ordinances.
We've been screen sharing them and discussing them for about an hour.
You've been
and a half.
screen sharing them. Okay, great. I'll jump on. I just called in.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Claire. Yeah, Claire there. If you could unmute. Claire. Small
Hey,
C.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi there. Hear me? Great. Thanks for your hard work tonight, you guys. I think you made huge progress. Bravo to you all. I
you.
just wanted to, as you were discussing the obvious conundrum of sequencing and dates and all that, which I know is TBD, but while you rolled or continued the licensing hearing or issuance for 30 days, that's a self-imposed deadline. So if you find yourself up against it and you need an additional 10 days or whatever it is, again, taking action, you are at liberty to roll that again. So I just wanted to point out the calendar arithmetic there.
Okay. Perfect.
So, Andre, it seems, or can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Sven.
Sorry about the reception. It seems to me that, the next steps are pretty clear. I don't think we need to vote on anything. Marianne and Kathy are running with the ball, and unless we need to direct, but I don't think we do.
Perfect. Is that right?
Can I just make a comment under the charter says that the proposal is reviewed by the council and thereafter the council submits it to the solicitor. Typically the way the council submits is by vote. So if the vote would simply be that the proposed ordinance revisions be submitted to the town solicitor for opinion as to form and legality as per the charter.
Keith.
I would make that motion. How's that?
Take it all in.
I would make that. I so move.
I second.
I don't know if that works, but
Motion made and seconded.
Does the clerk have a good? Does the clerk have a good motion there to work with?
The clerk will come up with a good motion there to work with. I will consult the charter. Thank you.
Would it be helpful if I repeated that?
Yes, please repeat that. The author should make the motion, or anybody.
The motion would be in order to submit the proposed ordinance revisions to the town solicitor for an opinion as to form and legality as per the charter.
I would make a motion that we submit the proposed ordinance to the solicitor for her opinion as to form and legal authority as per the charter.
Kathy, is that okay
Did I
with
get
you?
that right enough?
It's close enough.
Second, close enough.
I couldn't write fast enough. Okay, thank you. My hand wouldn't move that quickly.
I didn't mean to laugh, but I know exactly. Where you're
So
going.
I make that motion, please.
Second.
Motion-
Yes, I know. You have to do it.
I know. The motion's been made and seconded, and all those in favor, Martha?
Aye.
Sven?
Aye.
Keith?
Yes.
Mark?
I with thanks to Keith for his hard work.
And I'm in favor also. Motion carries unanimously 5-0. Okay, next item on the agenda here is discussion of special event license ordinance. This was something that was put on the agenda. Let's see, Martha had asked about this. Who wants to take it from there? Hold on a second. 862-3209, there's a hand up. I'm not sure if it was on the last item. I apologize for not seeing that. 862-3209, if you'd like to unmute and state who you are and.
Hey, Andre.
And we're listening. Who is this?
Andre, it's Jamie Johnston of Beacon Hill.
Jamie Johnson of Beacon Hill. How are you this evening?
Very good.
Thank you.
So I may be a little late to the party on the mopeds. Can I still chime in or?
We were talking about an ordinance change for the governing the motorcycle rental, but go ahead.
Just as far as the enforcement of mopeds, I feel like if we just did stiffer fines and loss of moped, no tolerance, zero tolerance, do kind of a task force in June, late June, and, all that money from those things can go towards a budget for the police. I think if you hit people hard, it spreads the word fast that it won't be tolerated on Block Island. Through social media, through people just talking, somebody gets fined and they lose their moped after they just rented it for 20 minutes because they were on dirt roads or because they're drinking. It's going to get around fast that there's no tolerance on Block Island.
Yeah.
Just an idea.
No, that's great, Jamie. Thank you. And we have discussed the enforcement the enforcement component of all of this at our past couple of meetings, and I think we've been reassured by the town manager, and I think members of council also realize that this probably is going to be a summer of zero tolerance with enforcement on that. But and that involves enforcement of the ordinance we already have on the books.
All right.
Yes, I think that's part of the component of road safety is enforcement, and we will be taking care of that.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity.
And call back anytime, Jamie. Thanks for your input.
All right.
Next item on the agenda is discussion of special event license ordinance. I don't know who wants to take the lead on that. Marianne, maybe?
I'm not sure why this was put on the agenda. Martha, you had requested this?
Yeah.
And Molly's not in the meeting, so.
Okay. Well, I can give some background. You will recall last summer we had some problems, and the only way to address it immediately was to pull all the outdoor entertainment licenses, because we didn't have a recourse of someone who had specific licenses. And apparently, and I can't find the ordinance with me right now. I thought I had it. Apparently, at some point, things changed from the council approving these to the being administrative. And some of you may recall the Spring House used to have concerts on the lawn of the Spring House way back when. And one of the things that, the town set the hours and the town agreed to the days that were proposed. And for example, they were not allowed on the 4th of July, on VJ Day, and on Labor Day. You just couldn't do them on those busy weekends. And it gave us a better control, a broader control, because last summer we had what appeared to be, but nobody could definitively say for sure, a problem that came largely from one event. But we didn't know that for sure. We couldn't prove it, and that's where we ended up. And actually, this was a suggestion that came from one of the license holders, that if we went to that old system, that we would have that oversight. We would know what was coming. We would have a better, and I think they have it in the clerk's office, but I don't think it may not be as on the radar of the police as it should be, or do they have enough? I mean, you get this 6 1/2 dozen of the other. Is it better for them to have their own security? And this is where you get into who pays for what. And one of the problems is, of course, when people have their own security, you don't get any idea of what's actually happened, unless they have to call in the police for something really draconian. Otherwise, it's just handled in-house, and we don't see any numbers from it, which is something I think we need to also look at when we look at various numbers. So all these factors, I'm talking about everything across the board, not just these licenses. And that's all this was. And I don't know when it changed. I don't know how it changed. And Molly's kind of been in and out the past week, and haven't really been able to get this nailed down. But that's all it was. It wasn't. This wasn't anything different. It wasn't anything new. It was just a matter of handling the same thing in the different way. And one of the things back along, it was like, why is the council bothering with this? Why can't this all be administrative? And it may be time to bring it back in, just so it's more on everybody's radar, and it's just more of an awareness of, if you really screw this up, then maybe you won't get maybe your next one won't happen. And just a way of keeping people aware that they have to follow the rules, and of keeping people more cognizant of there can be consequences without having to go through extreme measures. Liquor license withholding liquor licenses or show cause on liquor is an arduous process. It doesn't work. You have to have extraordinary amounts of evidence to make that sort of thing hold and happen. And that's a battle that I don't think anybody wants to go through in the middle of the summer. Because these things that we look at as recourse really, practically speaking, generally speaking, aren't.
Thank you, Martha. Sven, do you have a question?
It's very.
Nope, go ahead. You through, Martha?
I'm done. Yeah.
Thank you. Sven, go ahead.
Yeah, given that it's a workshop, I guess I'm trying to figure out what it is we're workshopping. I'm a little confused.
It's just do we want to go back to that? Because this, in fact, I'll say, when I was after we suspended the licenses, and Frank DeBase, who we all think is senior, but it's actually junior, Frank the elder now, was the one that he reminded me that this is what we used to do, and as a way of keeping things in line. And I will also, I think I gave him credit before, but he was the one that really worked to get everybody back in line to get those licenses reinstated.
So maybe I'm
it's just procedure. All it is a procedural thing. Should these things continue to be purely administrative, or should the calendars come before the council? That's really all it is.
How about if I do this? How about if I, in my next town manager's report in February 17th, not the 16th, the 17th, come back with a brief history of what has happened. Spend some time talking to Molly so that I can provide some information in this regard.
Thank you, Marianne. I see Millie McGinnis's hand was up a minute ago. Millie, do you have input and comment?
I can speak really briefly on this. The special event licenses are now handled administratively, and we widely submit those to other departments so that the police do have records of that. They sign off on them before they're actually issued. But I think the issues that have came up this past summer, we didn't actually even we've issued so few special event licenses. I don't think any of them went forward. The events that, Martha, I think that you're speaking of were covered under the outdoor entertainment license. And I think that that might be something that you'll need to focus on in more detail. Thank you.
Okay, that's right. I'm sorry, I had forgotten that piece of it. That for some reason they had over time become considered just a part of doing business, and I don't think that these special events should be just a part of doing business any more than the Springhouse concerts used to be. I mean, they used to be, you know, I don't know, there's only one special events, the only term for them. They were above and beyond normal. It wasn't the guy on the porch, guy or girl on the porch with a guitar in the afternoon.
Thank you, Millie. Thank you, Martha. Keith?
I was just going to say, I agree with Martha. I remember before I was elected actually talking to Martha about this. You have to, you know, we may need different tools given what's been happening, because there's a difference between, you know, Mark Emanuel playing his harmonica at the Old Island pub, and a country music festival that draws hundreds, if not thousands of people. They're two very different things. And, you know, to me, we ought to look at, you know, what the tools are that we need to have to make sure those things don't get insane.
Thank you. So moving forward, Marianne's going to bring us something on the 17th. Is that what I heard? Is that what? I'm sorry.
That's what I said, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Does anybody else have any other comments on this item? Mark, gonna learn how to play the harmonica? I don't see any comments, questions for anybody. Mark, we're gonna need a special event license for the town of Feather to Rebecca on July 4th. But we'll be legal on that. All right. I see no comments from the public. I see no comments from counselors. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved.
So moved, Martha. Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor, Mark?
Aye.
And Keith?
Aye.
Sven?
Aye.
All right, and I approve too. Thank you all. I think we had a really good productive discussion tonight. Much appreciated. And we'll see you next time on the 9th.
Thank
you, Andre.
You're welcome.